Today's video is a massive HOA saga from one poster. I'm going to take you through all the parts and the updates as the story unravels. Starting with, I asked one of my neighbor friends to run for board because I liked her. She got on and is suddenly such a politician and is now trying to take over the Facebook group for the neighborhood that I run. Posted by Queasy Calendar 6597. FHOA. So my neighborhood is small. You might remember me, we'll check those stories in a moment. We have 30 homeowners and 85 homes owned by AMH, formerly AH4R. Our Facebook group is small, 58 people right now to be exact. It was created by a renter back in August of 2022. I found it in September, and after finding a scammer in the group, the creator and admin, let's call her Kate, decided to make me admin. I also worked hard to get every homeowner possible in there as I started posting things about the HOA. Anytime I see in another group someone state that they live in the same neighborhood, I send them a message to join and so on. I never delete posts and people post whatever they want. Yesterday, I get a message from Kate stating that she received a message from my friend, let's call her Becky, with the following message. Hey girl, this is completely random, but I was wondering if we can add a couple more admins of the Facebook group since we're growing more and more? Or at least one more, me? If not, I completely understand. I just thought I would reach out to see your thoughts on that, smiley. My intentions are not to change anything, just to have extra hands and just in case anyone moves and so on. Becky knows I run the group. Becky has offered her help in the past and I declined it. Kate really does nothing in the group, as she's basically handed it over to me, since she's never ran a group before and I have. Plus, she's a renter and has no intention on being around forever. I let Kate know that Becky is on the HOA board and I don't believe Becky should be an admin of the group as well, nor do we need more admins, but it's totally up to her. She agrees and tells me, thanks to you, it's all under control, that the group is mine and yada yada. Now, during this, another neighbor, let's name her Liz, makes a post in the group basically saying that all the work that Alex and I, which we'll talk about in just a moment, wasn't good enough because we didn't hand out flyers making everyone aware of the second HOA meeting. Currently, a group of 6 people in the neighborhood are organizing a little neighborhood get-together, with the main organizer being, let's call this neighbor Annie, who I'm also friends with. They had flyers passed out to everyone in the neighborhood. The post said, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to whoever took the time to put out the meet and greet flyers door to door. Not everyone has social media, so I believe this Facebook group should not be the main form of communication for community events. So for example, HOA meetings. If the community is so passionate about homeowners having more influence in the HOA committee, why not put the effort into informing said individuals? Just my 2 cents. Well, guess what? Bob, who's Annie's husband, the one Liz is praising while downplaying what Alex and I did for the HOA, was the one who was supposed to do that, and didn't, but didn't tell Alex and I that he didn't do it until the actual meeting. I commented this, not naming the person, and Liz responds with, oh, that comment wasn't meant to put blame on anyone. It was meant to raise awareness. There have been 2 HOA meetings and there wasn't much notification for that first one either. Alex becomes ticked and starts commenting back to all these people defending mine and his actions. Becky is being a fake politician. Coincidence that Liz posts this while Becky is trying to become an admin and to make her little clique admins? I think not. I messaged Becky basically asking, what the heck? All I get is messages like, I didn't mean it like that, and I only messaged her because she's a creator versus you're an admin, that she wanted to be an admin in case anyone moves. Yeah, okay, fake. I told her, sure, if you ever have concerns about how this page is being managed in the future, please don't hesitate to inform me. If people relocate, they can remove themselves voluntarily. It seems that you all have conveyed that the effort that Alex and I put into everything was not satisfactory, and that's alright. Hope you have a pleasant evening. Like, okay, bye, jerk. If you have an issue with the group, you make your own. Shaking my head. So yesterday around 5:30 p.m., Alex makes a post in the neighborhood group, tagging the board members, Becky, James, and Jacob, asking if there's any updates on what's going on with the HOA as far as officer positions, the next HOA meeting, and so on, as he's received the annual bill again. About 15 minutes later, James comments and says, "We have a meeting at 6 today to discuss." I see that, and I comment asking what exactly constituted a closed board meeting, because otherwise, state law requires 48 hours of notice to owners and an open board meeting. Approximately 2 hours later, around 8 p.m., he deletes his comment, and so begins the attempt to cover it up. Don't worry, I screenshot it knowing he'd likely delete it. Now at approximately 9:45 p.m., Jacob decides to post the following to the neighborhood group. Due to feedback from community members, there is a rising concern that HOA posts are cluttering a community page primarily comprised of renters. At this time, I kindly ask that posts involving the HOA be avoided here out of courtesy to all of our neighbors until we can establish proper channels, a place to express, and most importantly, address concerns that are established. Details will be forthcoming as they are available. Well. Who does this guy think he is, dictating what can and cannot be said regarding the HOA in a neighborhood Facebook group ran by myself and a renter? Alex comments on it in confusion as to why, in a neighborhood group, would we not be allowed to discuss things affecting the neighborhood. I delete the post. I message Jacob stating, "Hey, if you have a concern with the way that the page is ran, you're more than welcome to bring your own concerns to me. But you do not make the rules of the page. If the HOA wants to make a Facebook group, awesome. But as for the neighborhood group, it is going to remain open to discuss any issues that anybody sees fit." He types and stops over and over and does not reply. He then proceeds to go to Alex's original post and comments, "Hey Alex, I was in the middle of responding, but my post was deleted, so I didn't get a chance to respond there." That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. The purpose of asking that the HOA post be avoided in the community page was to buy time and avoid people leaving the group until we can find a more formal venue. While Facebook is a great tool, a portal to submit concerns and items for meetings would be more beneficial in the long run, in my opinion. I delete that comment as well. He then decides to message me back stating, "It is unfortunate that you missed the part where I asked," and "Okay." I reply stating, No, I absolutely didn't. This is the first time that I've had to delete a post like this. As a board member, you should not be trying to control the conversation about the HOA. For reference as well, not even half the members on the page are renters." No reply back, of course. I knew Becky was trying to do some crap when she tried to weasel her way into being an admin. They want to control the narrative regarding the HOA. I updated the group rules this morning to state that it is an open discussion group, and we encourage open discussion on any topic that involves our community. This may include discussions about homeowners association, HOA matters, issues with the rental companies in our area, city news affecting our neighborhood, and other relevant local topics. However, please note that this group is independently run by neighborhood residents, which is not affiliated with any official organization or governing body. I woke up to this post, posted 6 hours ago, from James. I've tried to be civil and just ignore what has been going on through this page, but I've had enough. There are many homeowners who are upset at the behavior of one of the administrators. Whether she is on the main page stirring up contention or threatening lawsuits or direct messaging and harassing and belittling homeowners, this behavior, in my opinion, is unacceptable. Instead of this community page being a resource to connect with everyone, it is a hostile, toxic environment. Because of this, I and many other people am leaving this page and will look to start a new page where this type of environment will not exist. I know I am not alone in this, and it's unfortunate that we have to start another page from scratch, but several of us have tried to remedy this current page with no success. We are still figuring out how to run the HOA, as all the members who actually were voted on to that board are very green and have to learn what we're doing. Once we figure that out, we will have a way to communicate official HOA news and updates through whatever management company we can find to fit our needs. We will also be posting relevant information about the HOA on that other page, though it shouldn't be much given that we only have a few small parcels of land to manage. The HOA board for the following message is as follows. James is the president, Becky's vice president, and Jacob is treasurer and secretary. Hopefully this post stays up long enough for people to see before being deleted like other posts from other members. Y'all, I am sick of these people. I commented back and stated, I updated the rules for that reason. Jacob attempting to make a rule on what should and shouldn't be talked about on this page was inappropriate. The concern should have been brought to me prior to posting it. As for your secret board meeting, it's a big problem. That was legally required to be an open board meeting. I will not be deleting this post. Jacob's post was the first post I've deleted because of his ask for a rule to be made. You cannot control what is said about the HOA, and you shouldn't because that's a huge no-no in the HOA board world. Alex's question was totally an appropriate ask, which, by the way, you did not have to respond to, but you did, exposing that you were having a closed board meeting with no announcement. The next part's called, We Got Railroaded by the rental company that owns most of the homes in our subdivision for board seats, also posted by Queasy Calendar 6597. Prefacing this by stating, we had already checked with not one, but 2 lawyers, and they both have told us the rental company can only have 1 person on the board. The rental company also told us they only wanted 1 seat. At our meeting to elect the first ever board for this HOA that's been non-existent, 12 out of 30 of the non-rental households showed up less than our last meeting in April. Up until this point, AMH, formerly AH4R, told us that they wanted 1 board seat with 1 of the officer positions. Well, apparently 30 minutes before the meeting, AMH texts Alex, him and I are who organized this meeting, and tells him here's our 4 people we're putting on the board. We tell the lady that shows both of the lawyers that we've talked to said that you can only have 1 board seat, so this rep that they sent as their proxy gets another one on the phone, and this lady on the phone is going ballistic about how they own the majority of the homes in the neighborhood, and therefore they get to have all the seats they want, and that their legal team told them that. The rep that they sent then proceeds to throw an absolute fit, that instead of me printing them 85 ballots for each lot, that I printed 1 ballot that states multiple addresses and has every lot number of theirs listed. She starts hooting and hollering about how I need to print them 85 ballots and mail them out. I said, excuse me, but the voting has to be taken in person or by proxy, which is also in person per the CC&Rs and the bylaws. So here's your ballot, make the votes on that. She then marks a snarky butt comment that they are write-in candidates. Like bro, you literally gave us names 30 minutes before the meeting. She then gets all ticked at Alex and I, stating that we railroaded them. And at this point, Alex was getting ticked. He's usually pretty hard to get a read on how he's feeling, but he was definitely getting mad, as he's been the one in communication with them for the last month and a half. AMH refused to budge, so what ended up happening, and as it currently stands, was they have 4 seats and us homeowners have 3. I had almost the lowest amounts of votes for me on the ballots, 6 out of 12. There's obviously a communication between a couple of the men there not to vote for me, because they're friends with my loser butt next door neighbor, who we haven't gotten along with from the jump. These people have zero idea what me and Alex have been doing and dealing with in the background, and what type of prep went into this meeting, and I believe that they think being on the board will be a piece of cake and that they don't really have to do anything. One of the women, who I personally asked to volunteer to be on the ballot, got the 3rd homeowner board seat. As we were chatting on Facebook yesterday, she basically snaps at me because we disagree on how to handle AMH, and I told her that she was being a little too nonchalant about things, and that the new board isn't looped in to what me and Alex have been dealing with. She goes on to say, well, why aren't we looped in? And I told her, look lady, none of you were involved. Not once did any of you ever offer to help or do anything to help. I'm the one that asked you to be on the ballot for the board in the first freaking place. So she sends a snarky reply of, well, yep, that's correct. Now it's time to step up, yada yada. Basically, that my assistance was no longer needed. So I thumbed it up and went on about my day. She messages me an hour and a half later, apologizing, stating, "Sorry, just wanted to apologize if I came off not caring. That's not my intentions. Just ran into some personal things, and messaging you at the same time, my mind was in two places. Thank you for your knowledge." I tell her, "No problem at all. If you feel confident in handling things, I wish you the best of luck. Just to clarify, I have no issues with you personally, which is why I wanted you to join the ballot. However, regarding board member number 1 and 2, and the board in general, I've decided not to provide any further assistance or knowledge. They have an issue with me, and that's fine, but I have no desire to deal with it anymore due to that. I still intend to assist homeowners in understanding things, however." It then triggers a "wait, what?" type of response from her. I go on to explain that it's obvious a bunch of them all voted together and voted out of spite, not out of skills. She then begins to realize how screwed up the vote was. Neither me nor Alex made the board. The two people who have worked on it the most, she is now like, "Oh crap," and that they definitely banded against me, and begins trying to figure out a way to do a revote or have new votes cast. And I told her, "Nope, sorry, no way to redo anything unless it comes back that AMH cannot have those 4 seats that they took, but that's for the lawyers to figure out." So now we're at a standstill again, and basically it has to go legal. Oh man, what happens if people are going against the CC&Rs and bylaws? I'm going to preface this with, I'm a rule follower. If there's a hard written rule, I'll follow it. Now let's get into the story in question. Utah, 2020 to 21, new build community. The HOA has basically been non-existent. No meetings, no contact. Paid dues are due in April 2022. In February, we all get bills stating that all of our dues were due in January. Makes zero sense since our dues have always been April. So that kind of sparks interest for people to finally start poking around. This is a cheap HOA. We have no big parcels of land, there's just an itty-bitty weird strips around the neighborhood, and it's about $11 a month. Now I, for one, had already done a crap ton of research on everything back in September 22 when I was having issues with my trashy neighbor. So I was extremely familiarized with our CC&Rs and bylaws, and I was already aware that we were screwed as the homeowners. Let me preface this part by stating, no, I am not going to sell my house and move. I don't give a crap what this company does, since, like I said previously, I'm a rule follower. On to the story again. Our community is comprised of 115 houses. 30 of the houses are homeowners. 85 is owned by AMH, formerly AH4R. Now, the way of our CC&R and bylaws are written, each of the owners of the lot are entitled to 1 vote per lot owned, which means that AMH gets 73% of the voting and we only get 27% as actual homeowners. In turn, this basically means that we have no control unless we can get AMH on our side. Like I said, I don't care either way. Now, our declarant released their hold of the HOA back in August 22 and didn't notify anyone, including AMH. So it's been sitting with no board, no nothing. We were supposed to do a meeting within 90 days of the declarant releasing hold, but obviously we weren't aware that they did. This neighbor of mine lives across the street. His name is Alex. Alex was all gung-ho about getting a meeting set up. My mom died 3 weeks before all this started going on, so I obviously had a lot going on. He asked me to set it up, and I told him no, I have a lot going on and that he can set it up if he would like to. Afterward, he kept arguing with me about the AMH homes being included. He reached out to the company that does our financial side of the HOA, and they, of course, confirmed my understanding of the HOA. But keep in mind, they're only the financial management and obviously aren't lawyers or experts in bylaws and CC&Rs. So then that company tells them, well, you can still set up a meeting, and if AMH doesn't show, we can still vote and get everything done. And I told him, okay, if that's your understanding, set up the meeting. But I'm just telling you right now that the rules require 67% of votes of all members to change anything. He says he's not going to jump through hoops for this. A couple of weeks go by, and I message him saying, I assume you're not setting up a meeting? Well, that sparked a fire under his butt, so he goes off about how he had something come up at work and blah blah blah, and that if I want to take over, do so. I remind him my mom literally died, so no, I don't have the time. The next day he sets up the meeting, an unofficial meeting we held earlier this month to discuss as homeowners the next step. A couple of days before the meeting, he starts in on me again about how he thinks AMH homes are not part of it and yada yada. I again show him where it is in the documents. Fast forward to the meeting, and he's getting everybody all hyped up on getting the board going and doing all this and that. And there's another neighbor. We'll call him Bob. Bob is a city planner for a different city, but he's still a city planner, so he knows a bit, but he's trying to convince everybody that AMH cannot come in and basically take over the HOA. I keep reiterating that the way our rules are written, yeah, they can, and they are basically required to be involved in anything we do because they control the vote. But he's like in this weird, no, that's not how it works, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, whatever, so I just kind of ignore it. So Alex starts talking about setting up the next meeting so that we can establish a board. And so I told him that I think we should have a lawyer look over the documents first before we make any moves on anything, because you guys are basically going against all the rules that we have. Bob states that he already has a lawyer on retainer for the HOA because he has hookups, obviously, as a city planner. So he states that he will find out some details from the lawyer. Now, last night, Alex messages me and lets me know that he sent out an email to everybody that attended and that he set up a meeting for May and that AMH will be there. He states that it's for setting up a board and that we'll be voting for 3 people, president, secretary, and treasurer. I message him and let him know that, FYI, the rules state that there has to be 7 board members, so I'm not sure how you want to go about that, but that's what's in the rules. He then starts sending me a series of questions. Can you point me to that in the bylaws? Where in the CC&Rs does it state that everyone has to vote? When I was looking at the declarant, they only had 3 people on the board when they were the declarant. So I pull up the documents, I cite all my sources for each one. For question 3, the answer was the same as question 1. It states in there that during the declarant's control, there's a board member of 3. After the declarant's control, it's 7 board members. So then he asked me, do you know who the declarant is currently? And I told him there is no longer a declarant. That was YXC developer who released their hold. So then he asked, so there's no declarant presently? And so I told him, no, there is no declarant. There never will be a declarant again. They released their hold. Then he basically just changes the subject onto something different about the HOA with AMH. Why this dude won't read the documents himself is beyond me, and why Bob keeps trying to manipulate the wording to fit his narrative is also beyond me. I'm trying my best, but I'm obviously not a lawyer, and I feel like these 2 people are misleading everyone else. Bob has still not gotten updates from the lawyer. Declarant cannot become a thing again, right? So this is a proposed resolution to our issues. The declarant released control in August 2022. So option 3 says since the developer released the control, there's currently no declarant. So one idea is to see if AMH can be given declarant control of the HOA. Either developer does this, or through some legal process, they can be named declarant. If by some legal means that they can be, it's an option for the homeowners to allow AMH to be the declarant. In this case, AMH will release the financial management company, hire their own financial and maintenance companies, causing the HOA dues to be increased. Alright, so now Alex, who keeps saying he's stepping down after this meeting, wants to be put on the ballot for board and wants to be president of the board. And Bob heard back from his lawyer, who he obviously gave no background to, came back to him and obviously didn't read the documents in detail. They're trying to argue that we don't have to have a board of 7, only 3, 5, or 7, and that the CC&Rs override the bylaws. Yet, the passage in the CC&Rs tells us to refer to the bylaws for specifics on the board, and that during the declarant's control, it will be no less than 3 and no more than 7. I don't know why I bother, no one wants to listen anyways. How do we even handle voting of the board? Do we allow each vote to vote for multiple people? Because otherwise, we can have one vote for 30 different people. Another Bob update. Woke up just now from a creak in my bedroom, thought I was gonna die. Anywho, got on our group and Bob has commented the following. It appears you've got a complete and clear understanding of what the CC&Rs and bylaws say, so I guess I'm wondering why I even asked a 15-year land use attorney to review our boilerplate CC&Rs and inform us of what it says, if we are going to think that we understand it better. Please do not ask me to ask him any additional questions. It was a waste of his and my time. And, actually, please remove my name from the ballot. I am no longer interested in serving on this board. If someone writes my name on the ballot and people vote for me, I will decline the position. It will just be a waste of a vote. Y'all, I cannot deal with the drama of Bob. Like, goodbye. If you're trying to make me look like a bad person, and if people believe that, yeah, sure, okay. Y'all HOA people are just a bunch of idiots anyways. ETA, I already hired my own real estate and HOA lawyer yesterday. I think these neighbors would sound like they would not be that fun to live around with all this drama that's going on. I just keep to myself because, hey, when you have bad neighbors, it sucks. When you have good neighbors or ones that don't bother you, you realize just how much of a blessing that is. What do you think? I think my HOA is discriminating against me because I'm Jewish, posted by Throwaway 27409. For the most part, I actually have no real problems with my HOA. We pay our dues every month and for the most part keep to ourselves. But somehow, over the span of 3 days, things have escalated to such a degree without our knowledge. It all started last December when we were left a nasty note from an anonymous but concerned neighbor because of the religious propaganda in our window. It was a menorah. I was a bit taken aback because I've seen ornaments and those window sticky things saying things like Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, and so on. So I discreetly moved it to another window where no one can really see it because I refused to get into it right there at the holidays. Over the past few months, we'll eventually get notices from the HOA citing that we recently received a complaint that you walk too loud, your TV was too loud between the hours of 2 and 4 when neither myself nor my spouse were home. You make too much noise when you're in your kitchen. Nothing major, and we've never been fined. So my spouse and I really just ignore it. We get that maybe the HOA is just trying to appease them. On Friday, we received a notice from the HOA that we were being fined for having more than 2 dogs. We don't have more than 2 dogs. We have exactly 2 dogs, and this morning we woke up to a freaking swastika taped to our door with this concerned neighbor concerned about our well-being and felt like maybe we should move. I wish I could tell you that we were joking, and this is just something with a horrible but funny pun. But my wife is terrified and angry all at once, and we can't help but feel like maybe someone in our unit is trying to pit the HOA against us. Where can we go from here? Should we get a lawyer? Should we write our concern to the HOA? We'd just like some advice on how to handle this. Holy crap! I wasn't expecting this type of response, but thank you for taking the advice. We logged in today after taking a day to ourselves just to get out of the house and get my wife calmed down. We'll definitely be talking to a lawyer today. As for security cameras, this is out of the question. We live on the 2nd story of a condo. Our door is on the interior of the building and you have to have a key to get into the main building. So we are 99.9% sure that it's someone in our building. But we can't install the security cameras without prior consent of the HOA, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to say no. But I'll ask anyway. I've also notified the HOA, and they're looking into it. Overall, I have no real problem with my HOA. They keep our lawns looking great, and they do a good job of keeping the buildings kept well. But I'm still wary. We have 3 board members in our building. We called the police and we're meeting with a detective later this afternoon since we don't feel physically threatened. For those of you wondering, we live in North Carolina and considering moving elsewhere after all this is over with. The detective just left, at least something has been filed. The board member from the HOA came over and wants to get all of this sorted out and is sure it's just a misunderstanding. Meeting with a few lawyers tomorrow. Since all of this has been done anonymously, I'm wondering if anything will actually come of this. I do wish we got an update from OP at this point because this is a crazy messed up situation, don't you agree? Neighbor is seeking to operate a small business selling plants and produce out of a cart on shared HOA property, posted by Jolly Duty. We have a quiet HOA in Virginia where all lots are 10 plus acres. The HOA doesn't try to exert too much influence or rule enforcement over the annoying issues, but they do have shortcomings over road maintenance, gravel roads, and improper allocation of HOA budget to helping select homeowners with their culverts, driveways, and various utilities which are technically not covered by the HOA's very limited budget. The homeowners they tend to favor are those who've been in the community the longest, acting as if that gives them some special consideration. Most recently, one neighbor who has been here a long time was operating a small business on common property. It's a cart selling plants and produce. They advertise the business on the main road in order to drive traffic. Customers parked on the narrow, shared gravel road, and the rules for the HOA specifically forbid any business being operated outside of anyone's lot and also forbids customers from parking on shared roads. Hence, neighbors complained and the cart was soon gone. However, the HOA board soon after announced that they would be voting on whether to allow the cart to resume operations. This seemed wrong to me. Shared HOA property should not be used for operating a small business, no matter how innocuous that business may be. The customers parking in the ditches and performing K-turns on gravel roads leads to deterioration and more cost for the HOA. It's also annoying to navigate past, and frankly, it's not what I want to experience on our once quiet private road. I was thinking of being more aggressive towards the HOA and preventing the cart from returning, even if that ultimately meant threatening legal action. Question: am I simply not being tolerant, or is the cart really not reasonable under the circumstances? The board stated they would make the determination, which they technically don't have the right to if it's in conflict with the HOA rules. They didn't offer up a vote for the community. If they want to allow a business to operate on common property, they would have to open up a vote to all members, and an amendment would need to be ratified by an 80% vote. This comment gives a great answer, and OP gives an awesome reply. You're not being intolerant, it's a slippery path because once you allow one cart, there will be many more, and they won't even be operated by people within your community. There goes your neighborhood. And OP says, that may be my biggest concern. Under basic equal protection, they would have to allow all members to use the common property for business, if they allow one. Very slippery slope indeed. He was downvoted for that. Do you agree with him? Ready for some insane Karens? This story is entitled, not entitled, entitled Neighbor Throws a Fit That I Won't Let Her in My House to Take My Alcohol When I'm Gone, posted by Deleted. I live in a 3-unit townhome. We're all good friends and we share keys with each other. One of them is my best friend who, with my approval, enters my house when I'm gone to grab a soda. In return, she cooks me food and shares her alcohol with me on weekends. Only thing is, she has the code to my house alarm. This becomes relevant later. One day, entitled neighbor, who we will call Karen, who lives in a different building, sees her leaving my house and asks what's up. Friend tells her what's up. Karen thinks we're friends just because I'm friendly to her when she comes around and texts me to rat out the neighbor. I tell her it's fine. Now, Karen is very obnoxious, but we're all nice to her because you don't want crazy people living across the street. Karen a week later comes by and asks why I won't give her a key. I make up an excuse that it's a safety thing because I'm the only one with a fire extinguisher, which is also a fact. The only excuse I can think of now is my landlord won't let me. It seemed to shut her up. I really don't want her in my house. I can only imagine what she'll do in there, and her bringing her kids over to see my crap. I have expensive computer equipment. I don't need kids around. Fast forward a month later. She sees me unload a bucket of fireball shots and quickly makes a beeline across the street and asks for some and trying to make friendly conversation. I roll my eyes and struggle with the seal and hand her 2. Thanks babe, love you. Ugh, whatever, it's not a big deal. Meanwhile, she still messages me like friends and I watch her house from time to time while she's gone. Last week, I'm at my mom's house when I get a phone call from my home security system company asking if I need police. Roommate and key holders have my code and it gives you 60 seconds to push the code even if it's wrong, so something is up. I rush home and my front door is wide open, letting the hot summer air strain my electric bill with 2 cops inside. It's none other than Karen standing at the counter and casually says, "Here she is, she lets me in her house, we're best friends." My jaw drops. Apparently, she has the garage door code to friend's house where she found my house keys in friend's house and has the balls to take my stuff when I'm gone, like she's entitled to it. And then didn't message me that the alarm was screaming, let me know she wants something, and didn't even leave when the cops show up. It took the cops 8 minutes to get there, so I have no idea what she was poking around with a screaming alarm. She broke into 2 houses like it was no big deal. I demand that she leaves, not pressing charges because I don't want a crazy angry neighbor. My city charges you $100 if you have an unregistered alarm system, so I get a fine from the city. I paid the fee and stuck the bill in her doorway. Haven't seen a dime of that yet. She also hasn't asked for my alcohol either since then. I want to know if you agree with this comment because I do. It says, "You are too kind not to have pressed charges." As this comment says, you should never have to make an excuse to keep your own stuff private and yourself safe. Don't you agree? This is an insane Karen story called "Aunt Shows Up at My House with All Her Stuff, Tells Me She's Going to Be Living with Me for a While," posted by Outside the Walls. So, without getting too political, we recently had an election in the USA. My aunt supported one side, while her husband and adult offspring supported the other side. The election did not go the way that my aunt wanted it to. Aunt proceeded to flip her crap, breaking things and yelling, even going as far as to set her daughter's "I voted" sticker on fire. Her husband called the cops. The cops declined to arrest her for anything, but suggested that she find a different place to stay for the night. This happened yesterday in New Jersey. Fast forward to 2 a.m. today. Here I am, sleeping peacefully in my home with my family over 500 miles from all of that drama. My fence alarm goes off, waking me up. I don't know if it's a bear or a trespasser, so I get my pants on and grab my shotgun just to be safe. Turns out my aunt had cut the lock off of my front gate because she couldn't get in and I wasn't answering my phone. Why does she have bolt cutters in her car? So I safely stow my weapon and ask her what the heck. She starts crying and screaming, mind you, this is at 2 a.m. in a quiet rural community, about how the devil took her family and how they threw her out. And she says that since she has nowhere else to go, I need to let her in so she can stay in my guest room for a while. I told her one of my guilties is using that room right now, and the room is occupied. This person came from Texas all the way to West Virginia to hang out with me. I'm not going to toss them out with 30 seconds of notice because my aunt showed up. So she decides to call the police and tell them that I'm keeping her from entering her home. We're out in the woods, so the cops don't get here quick. 4:41 a.m. The cops show up. I see them talking to her in my driveway. She shows them the bolt cutters and the ruined lock, and a few minutes later, the officer knocks on my door. "Your tenant claims that." I immediately cut him off and tell him that I do not have a tenant. I own and occupy this structure, and I offer to show him the deed. "Well, this woman claims," and I cut him off again. "What's the address on her ID say?" I reply. At this point, the cop is ticked at me, I can tell, so I try to de-escalate the situation. "Look, man, she doesn't live here. She's never lived here. That's my aunt. She lives in New Jersey. Please check her ID card." The cop calms down a bit and lets me know that he will talk to her and then comes back. Around 10 minutes later, the cops come back to my door. 3 of them this time, not just the one from earlier. One of them had stripes and a rocker on his arm, so I could tell he was important. He asked me if there's any way Aunt can stay here for the night because she's too drunk to drive, so he can't let her back on the road. This woman just drove from New Jersey to West Virginia drunk. Thank God she didn't kill anyone. I told him that she cannot stay here, but that I'm sure there's room in the local jail. The cop asked me if she can just sleep in her car in my driveway and then leave in the morning. I told him absolutely not. When she wakes up in the morning, I would just have to call them to come get her off my property. So that would solve nothing. I asked them to remove her from my property. Long story short, her car got towed and she is in the drunk tank, no charges pending for the night. So much for sleeping tonight. My kids need to be up for school soon. I mean, what would you do if this happened to you? How would you handle it? Karen story time, entitled Woman Wants Man with Cancer's Chair, posted by Raised Anchor 68. This was over 20 years ago. I was invited to a coworker's wedding, and it was small budget and big energy. The ceremony was to be in a garden, and there was going to be more people than seats. The invitation politely asked that the seating be for immediate family and those who might need it more than others. I arrived and met my other coworkers. We were all young and fit then, so standing was no issue for us. We were there early and we got a spot near the front and close to the chairs. The chairs were in two sections with a path in the middle, and the front row of each section was reserved for the bride and groom's family. The rest of the chairs were up for grabs. A couple arrived, both late 20s, and took the seats at the end of the row behind the bride's family row, just near us. The man of the couple did not look well, and his hair was missing. A few people made their way over to say hello to him. He smiled as he talked, and he looked happy to be there. The chairs filled up fast with the older attendees, and people that arrived after that took standing places at the sides like us. I checked my watch, and start time was not far away. A few minutes later, I saw a young woman walk in. She was in her early 20s, and she walked along close to the chairs, looking around as if she was searching for someone. She got all the way up to near us and then tapped the unwell man on the shoulder. I thought she might have known him until I heard her say, "Excuse me, can I have that seat?" He looked at her as if he didn't understand, so she helped him by repeating, "Can I have that seat?" "Why?" he asked, and I thought the same question. "Because you're a man and I am a woman. You should be a gentleman and offer me that seat." Every conversation nearby suddenly stopped. People turned and looked. The bride's family in the front row must have known this man, and they all turned around. A few of them stood up and looked as if they were about to interject when the man's partner leaned in front of him and said loudly, "He has cancer and he needs to sit down, okay?" The young woman looked around and realized that she had a lot of attention. "How was I supposed to know?" she protested, and then walked quickly away and disappeared in the crowd behind the chairs. The wedding went well after that. I spoke to my coworker when he returned from his honeymoon, and the man was his wife's cousin. The young woman was his wife's coworker, but they were not close. I did learn over the years that followed that the man ended up beating the cancer and became a father. I do not know what happened to the young woman because I never asked. You gotta love a wholesome Karen story with a good ending like that, but I can't help but wonder what happened to her. What do you think? You won't stop smoking on your porch at night? Guess we'll burn our house down, posted by ULFR. Hi all, just found out why there were a bunch of flashing lights and loud sirens on the street behind mine last night, and I am gobsmacked. The family that used to live in the house behind mine, whoever, so helpfully called the police on me after I gave them a heads up about their Wi-Fi, has moved out. A new family has moved in. Our houses are separated by a couple hundred feet and a brush line. I found this out because they came to talk to me last week about my smoking the funny before I go to bed on my porch and how the smell is terrible and it's bothering them and I just need to not do that. As a note, I smoke precisely 1/2 gram of the funny on my screened-in porch before bed, perhaps 3 to 4 times a week. The likelihood that any of the smoke from that is going anywhere near their house is slim to none. I told the new back neighbors I'll turn a ceiling fan on to thin out the smell, but I'm not going to get eaten alive by bugs just before bed because they don't want me to smoke on my own property and the porch is screened in. I guess this answer didn't satisfy them because last night one of them came up with a cunning plan to get back at me. They dug a hole in their lawn, built a fire with a bunch of green pine wood so it would be extra smoky, started the fire, and then put a box fan pointed at my porch next to the fire and went inside. 3 guesses what happened. If you guessed that they set their own house on fire, you would be correct. One of their next door neighbors called 911 because some cinders from the fire set my back neighbor's house on fire. I have no idea how much the fire damaged the house, only that the people who lived there got arrested and given an impressive set of fines for negligence and a bunch of other things. Did I mention that my county is under a fire weather warning and all of those fines are multiplied? The juiciest part, and the reason I decided to post on here about it, was one of the cops was talking to the neighbors who were going on and on about the awful, funny smell that I was causing and making the house uninhabitable. The cop sniffs a little bit and tells them that's not that's a skunk. Entitled Crazy HOA President, posted by Snatch Biscuit. Just before leaving active duty military after almost 10 years, my wife and I bought a large house in my hometown on the coast in a nice neighborhood with an HOA. I'd never lived in an HOA before and never knew how bad and cliquey or political it could be. Not long after we moved in, the letters started about having a boat in our driveway. Mind you, we live not 100 yards from the water. Really? So we complied and placed it in the local marina. After living there about 2 years, the neighbors we had were really great. They moved, and then a new older couple moved in. They were really nice at first, letting my children swim in their pool, sharing an adult beverage in the evening, talking on the fence, and so on. And then it happened. The wife ran for and became the HOA president. She started walking around the neighborhood and taking notes. She would walk into people's yards and make corrections, and even go so far as to trespass into people's backyards, gated or not, and take pictures of violations and send out letters. I came home one evening to find her on my back porch looking at things and taking pictures. I was a police officer at the time, and while trying to be nice, I informed her that she could get into a lot of trouble for what she was doing. She tried to tell me, as the HOA president, she was entitled to go into people's private property and even their houses to inspect them if need be. I informed her of the state and the federal laws against this, and it started a war. I immediately started receiving $100 fines for very minor issues with my home. I had fixed the issues immediately and never had to pay the fines with the HOA property management company, but did file complaints. The HOA property management company never did anything about the complaints. And then it happened. I also owned a small business which I had a truck and trailer that I would use during the business day. I had this parked in front of the house one day, and she took a picture of it. According to the HOA rules, it was not allowed to be there overnight, and it never was. I received a letter and a fine for $100, stating that the vehicle had been parked there overnight. This time, I asked for a review with the HOA board of directors, the PM company, the attorney, and my attorney. This was going to cost the HOA, the PM company, and all involved much, much more than the $100 in time and money. At this meeting, I asked the HOA president to present evidence other than one picture that the vehicle was there more than 24 hours with time and date stamps. She could not. I then asked for the $100 to be dropped. The HOA board and the PM company refused. I was publicly berated by the HOA president in front of the board and my attorney, saying that I should be a good soldier and do as I was told by the HOA board and obey the rules. At this point, my attorney and I had had enough evidence of harassment due to the recording of the conversation. We then informed everyone in the room that we had been recording everyone. This inflamed them more, and they threatened to call the police for violating the law. In our state, it was more than legal and well within our rights. We then informed them that we would be filing a lawsuit which was sure to win and it would bankrupt the HOA. According to state law and the HOA bylaws, in the event that the HOA ceased to exist or became bankrupt, each and every one of the 35 houses in the HOA would have their mortgages immediately due and payable. Most people don't know this exists in a lot of HOA covenants. We just got up and we walked out of the meeting and said, we think this settles the matter and hope that there will be no further fines threats, harassment, and so on. I had very good friends in the neighborhood and did not want to see their families affected. About a month later, the HOA had elections for a new HOA board. I informed several people in the neighborhood that I would be running for the HOA board president. We got together, and on the night of the board meeting and the election, we attended, and there were only about 10 people there to vote. There were 6 people, along with myself, who voted for me, but miraculously, the incumbent HOA president had a unanimous vote when the property management company chair counted the votes. Right there in the meeting, I asked all 6 people who voted for me and to raise their hand. With me, that was 7, and the PM chair had no answer since it already had been entered into the corporate minutes. I said it would be fine, let it stand, and then informed everyone in the room about the previous meeting, the mortgages, suing the HOA, and now calling the state attorney general's office. Within a short time, the property management company was changed out, the HOA president was replaced with a nice level-headed gentleman, and I never, ever so much as heard a peep from the HOA ever again. I played by the rules, more or less, but eventually sold the house and moved on. Never mess with the paratrooper. HOA Boat Issues by Matt Reston. After moving into our new home in a subdivision with a homeowner association, I received a call from my wife while at work. She informed me that we had just been visited by a contingent of officers of our HOA. She further told me that they were going to make us move our fence. For the backstory, when initially looking at the model home, I asked for and received a copy of the HOA covenants, and I read them cover to cover. I was particularly interested in whether or not homeowners were permitted to have boats on their property. I found that boats were permitted as long as they could not be seen from the street. I agreed to purchase the home if the builder would pour a concrete boat pad beside the garage, thinking that I could put up gates in front of the pad blocking the view from the street. The builder agreed and we purchased the home. When I arrived home, I asked my wife what happened and was informed of the following. 3 HOA officers visited and were informed that I was at work. They congratulated her on a beautiful home, but mentioned that we would have to move the gates as they were forward of the middle of the house and the fences are not permitted in the front yard, per the HOA covenants. They then said, "Your husband is a fishing guide, isn't he?" When she replied yes, he said that they all liked to fish and he was sure that something could be worked out, and they left. I called the number that was provided and one of these gentlemen answered. I said that my wife had told me that they visited and what they had said. I told them that I would be happy to take them fishing. All we had to do was to come up with an agreeable date, and of course, my fee was $400 per day. He replied, "I don't think you understand." And I said that I do understand it perfectly. I then said that you may be able to force me to move my gates, but let me tell you what will happen if you do. I will head out to the farming area and find the rustiest, beat-up piece of crap automobile that I can find, park it in my driveway, and put a 9-foot satellite antenna on the roof of the car, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. Read your covenants. I then hung up. I never heard another word from them. This Karen in the story is deranged. You'll see what I mean. How does she try to even pull this off? It's called I Wanted This House by Cats Are Nice Death. Almost 30 years ago, my dad retired from the Army. That's important to the story. And we all moved from the barracks to an entirely different county. Not overly fun for me or my sister because she just joined secondary school and didn't want to leave her friends behind, and I just didn't want to move again. If you're not familiar with the British Army, soldiers used to get posted places, invariably places like Germany, Switzerland, Cyprus, etc. It was 50-50 of if the whole family was posted with them, depending on how long they were away for. By the time I was 8, we'd already moved at least 4 times that I can remember. Anyway, the MOD, Ministry of Defense, used to have old soldiers' quarters in places, and when the barracks in the areas no longer needed them, retired soldiers and families would get first dibs on the houses. Mom and Dad found this house, and we set about packing up again and moving again. but this time for good. Yeah. About 6 months after we'd moved, we'd almost made it out on our own and had some family friends over for dinner. We're all in the dining room, an actual room separate from the kitchen and living room. I was amazed, I'd never seen one. And we were sitting down to eat, and I mean all of us. Grandparents had 2 cars, 3 sets of friends were 3 cars, we were 1 car, so it was very obvious from the outside that the house is not empty and a lot of people are there. Dad looks up from eating and his jaw drops. There is a woman just wandering around the garden. She's sniffing the flowers, looking in the windows, and generally behaving as if the house was a horse for sale, checking its metaphorical teeth. It wasn't even as if she could have just walked down the side of the house into the back garden. She would have had to unlock and open 3 gates. So Dad goes out with a couple of his friends, which were all ex-army and rugby types. They're big guys, hard to miss. And this woman glances at them, this Karen, and then continues poking about the garden and trying to get into the shed. Dad shouts, "What do you think you're doing?" She says, "Well, I'm looking at the garden," bold as brass. The friends say, "Yeah, we see that. Why?" "Well, look, what are you doing here? This is my house. Get off of my property. Who do you think you are?" She just shrugs and says, "My son was going to buy this house. I want this house. I wanted to see what I could do with the garden when he buys it." Dad stares. "What the heck do you mean? When he buys it? It's not for sale. I live here." "No, you don't. My son wanted to buy this house." "Mate, we're going to check on the families and call the police. You okay with her?" "Yeah, just make sure the kids stay inside." And to the woman he says, "Get the heck off of my property." "It's not yours. It's mine. I live here," she replies. By this point, we've opened the window to get a proper listen, and Mom has lost her crap. It's a proper mama bear reaction. Her 2 babies are inside, along with 6 other kids that she's known their whole lives. She flies out the door. She shouts, "Get the heck off of my property. Get away from my husband and get away from here." "Calm down, love. It's okay. Go inside. I'll get rid of her." The woman with 0 sense of self-preservation says, "Who do you think you are? This is my house. Get away from me, you crazy fat bee." Dad has to grab Mom on the way past before she ends this woman. I don't want some sort of unhinged woman in my house. Get off of my property." Thankfully, the police arrive and escort the woman off the property, telling Dad to invest in locks for the gates. Dad's turn to lose his crap. He explains, loudly, at length to police that this woman had to unlock a few gates and shows him how the woman got in. As they're getting her to the car, she declared that she'll get us out of her house. It's her son's house. She lives here and she'll get us out. Dad tells the police that he's pressing charges, and the woman's tone changes. Suddenly, it's not her son's house at all. She didn't mean any of it. She's very sorry. She can't be charged. I don't know what came of it in the end. Mom and Dad wouldn't tell us, but I still remember trying to work out if she was crazy or what. But either way, we still live in the house, and we all still love it. It's got a dining room. This story's called Karen Tries to Pay with Fake Coupons, posted by Eternum713. For background, I used to exclusively sell cell phones inside of a middle-class retail chain. This service was actually run by a different company than the retail chain itself. We would provide all the nicer cell phones like iPhones and Samsung Galaxies, $800 to $1,500, and the retail chain provided the cheaper prepaid cell phones. My team and I would sell all of the phones, but only we could sell the nicer phones. At the time of this incident, I was the team lead for my store, meaning that when it came to the nicer phones, I was the final word. We never discounted the phones directly, but various service providers would authorize rebates and incentives, and that was it. When you bought a nicer phone from us, we would directly pull up your service provider account and set up the phone directly, and they would provide any discounts or credits or rewards. We were also able to report fraud through this system. The story. It was a slow day at the cell phone station, so I decided to do a cold sell lap of the store, leaving a newer team member, let's call her Tina, in charge of the cell phone area for the 20 to 30 minutes that it would take to find someone to buy a phone. I was gone maybe 10 minutes before I get a call from the store manager asking me to get back to the cell phone station because there was an issue. When I get back, I see Tina is about to cry while an overweight Karen is holding a small piece of paper and yelling at her. As I get closer, I hear the word coupon and I immediately know what's about to go down. Less than a week ago, Tina had accepted several fake coupons, which was my day off, and her partner called out without telling me and severely discounted the nicer phones on the fake coupons. She was new, and we hadn't covered that you can never discount the phones yourself, nor that we had never had coupons for these either. Afterwards, I made it clear to her that our team will never discount the phones. Cut back to the present. I see the store manager watching from around the corner. I waved him off and strode forward. Facing Tina, I asked what's going on. Tina let me know that the Karen wanted the newest iPhone and was trying to use a 99% off coupon. Before she could continue, the Karen cut in. I don't know what the issue is. She accepted these coupons last week from my friends. Karen then pushed the coupon towards Tina, like that would magically change the situation. I told Tina to take an extra 15 in the back and then turned back to the Karen. I was ticked, and I think it was showing just a bit because Karen flinched. While I hadn't been in too much trouble over the coupon issue the week prior, I had been passed over for a promotion to another store because of it, and I was not in the mood. Not only was she basically trying to steal a phone, she had specifically targeted Tina. Who told you Tina would accept this ridiculously fake coupon? Was it Kathy? We had records for the nicer phones, and Kathy's account was banned from every one of our locations because of the prior incident. Karen became pale at that last question, and I think she realized that she was in trouble. She tried to mention something about the retail chain accepting these types of coupons, and I laughed. I explained that the retail chain didn't have any say over the nicer phones, and that we worked for a different company. She tried to insist that we had already taken these coupons before, so why couldn't she use them now? At this point, I was done, and then I told her, in no uncertain terms, that we will never discount the nicer phones and that she would not be purchasing phones from this location, period. Fortunately for me, the store manager had hung around, and I called him over. "Can you call asset protection?" I picked up the coupon and handed it to him. Using a fake coupon is stealing, and this woman also knows Kathy from last week. Karen tried to run, but we were lucky in that the police were already at the entrance for an entirely separate issue. I heard later that Karen did get past them initially, but the police were informed of the situation and were able to detain Karen before she made it to her car, and then arrested Karen. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened after that, but I did give a statement about this incident 2 weeks later to the police, so I think charges were filed. I literally laughed when I read 99% off because who even tries to think that's believable? What do you think? Housing cooperative ticks me off, posted by some account 89235. I'm living in a block of flats with slightly higher standards, meaning we have a gate and our own parking spaces, trash cans, camera system, and everything. I work as a programmer and remotely. I'm also single and I keep mostly to myself. I try to never harm anyone, not get into any drama, just live slowly and steadily alone, barely leaving home except for doing groceries, so my neighbors know me as that homeowner that never causes any problems and is always helpful and polite. One time, I had to replace my current bed. It was old and dirty and I just wanted something better. So I ordered a new bed and dismantled my old one, ready to be taken out. Once every 2 weeks, a truck comes in and checks through the neighborhood to take away all of the big things set beside the trash containers. That day was tomorrow. Sadly, I live on floor 3, so taking my old bed alone would be just too hard for me to do by myself. I asked my brother for help, but he couldn't have done it tomorrow, so he helped today. Now, before this, our block's terms of service say that you are not allowed to put out big trash except on the day that the truck comes. So, not wanting to make any outburst, I asked my favorite neighbor for a favor. if I could put it on his parking spot the day before, because, well, I wouldn't be able to do it on the correct day. He gave me a thumbs up, and then I checked with another member of the Housing Cooperative Board if it's fine, since the owner of the spot knows. He also said it's okay for him. So I moved on with the plan. My brother came in, we moved my old bed outside, occupied the spot, we called it a day. That's when the Karen came in. She's around 50 plus years old from looks. You know, the type that sits all day in the window and tries to find something to complain about. So she got into my home and tried to explain that it's against our community rules, so I had to have it taken away right now. I, in exchange, tried to explain to her why I did that, how I got approval from people and whatnot. She was not having it. She threatened to call the police on me for littering if I didn't get it done today. I said, sure, okay, guess I am technically in the wrong here, so I'll just comply. I called a private company to take away the bed today. I also specifically went to her home and told her that it would be done today, and she said it's fine. So the truck arrives and they start taking away the bed, and so does the police. Apparently, she already did call the police without waiting for me to do anything. I am livid and I'm literally panicking, not because I was afraid of a fine or anything, but just because it was the first time in my life that someone did something hostile for me, even though I said I'd do what she wants. I explained the whole situation. The police see no problem, they don't even cite me anything. They just give me a handshake, pat me on the back, and they leave. The lady that called the police looks out the window and yells, "Thank you, officers," with a grin. I am ever more upset at this point. I think to myself, you want to perfectly obey the law? Fine, I'll make sure you do. I got the community rules from the council and I studied them thoroughly to find potential reasons to make her life heck. I see her taking out the trash. I clearly hear glass bottles in the bag, and I look out the window. She throws it in the wrong container. I call the community board. Bam! Your rent went up because you don't comply with our sorting garbage rules. The next day I come back from groceries and I see her car. She parked a little over the line, so it's basically like taking up 2 spaces. I call the police. Bam! She gets a fine. She walks out her dog in the private space as I watch her through the window. I see her dog going, but she doesn't scoop it up. Oh, did you just do that? I call a community board with a complaint. She came to me and wanted to apologize. Now, here's the part that makes me look bad. I said, no, I don't accept it. Why? Because, I'll admit, I am vindictive to people who try to create trouble for others without a very good reason. I said, all I'm doing is making sure you are following the community rules. Is that wrong? And she scoffed at me, something rude, and went away. I've been doing that for like 3 months now. A month ago, she was kicked off the board for too many rules violations. Today, she moved out, but before she did, she made sure to put a bag of trash on my doorstep while I was away. Sad for her, she's stupid and the trash contained a letter with her information on it. So I had the last laugh by reporting it to the police. I know, rules are rules, and I was technically in the wrong first for breaking them. But the moment she went out of her way to enforce them and then screw me anyway, that's when the line was crossed. I have no shame for bullying her out of here. I was just doing God's work and ensuring that the rules are not broken. You want the house? Okay, good luck at the renovation. Posted by Throwaway 1914-07. This happened in the year 2015. This is the long story short of the already long story. My grandmother on my father's side died in 2007, bless her soul. She owned a house and a lot of bungalow type stuff near the sea. Now this house wasn't paid in full, and there's still a remaining balance of about $5,200 in US dollars, which this is already big money for us. Because my father is the only son, his older sisters agreed that he should get the house. There was no will, but he should pay the remaining balance. We lived there and we renovated the house. Well, my father did almost 75% of the work. I mean, he added 2 bedrooms, he did a ceiling and furniture, he even added another bathroom and tiled the floors, kitchen sink and septic tank. There was no drainage system on that location. So basically, we received the house in bare shape. We paid fully in 2015, but we didn't receive the title. There was just so many excuses. 2016 comes. His nephew is a retired commander, and he visited my parents and told my father that he wants to add a 2nd floor so he and his wife could live there also. My father didn't agree, and he called his older sister if they want that to happen. They just said that they don't want to get involved. His nephew showed him that he already had the title of the house. I don't know how he did that. Maybe he used his political background. I'm not sure. So my father was furious. He called me and told me what had happened. By that time, I had already bought a small patch of land for them when they want to retire, but I'm still saving enough money to build a house suitable for their needs. There were court battles that I will not include, but in the end, his nephew won. But there was an agreement that he has to pay my father $7,400. He mailed us the contract that we should vacate the house after 6 months, and there was a specific item that our lawyer pointed out. A, we should repaint the house, no specific color, and B, leave the house in the original state. Guess what? We hired a construction team to demolish the bedroom, the bathroom, remove the ceiling, the kitchen sink, tiled floor, and also the septic tank, leaving it in the original state. We spent about $2,800 including the labor. The cherry on top, we painted the house with black inside and red outside with violet dots. It was a huge eyesore. I was bombarded with lots of calls and messages from my aunts and cousin, which I did not reply. We went no contact after that. My parents now live in a beautiful farmhouse, tending their small garden. They enjoy morning walks by the lake, just living a stress-free environment. They're planning to adopt a puppy next month. Maybe you're wondering if $5,000 is a small amount of money. I didn't include that the title was pawned to someone, not a family member. We got our money back because we have receipts proving that we paid the remaining balance. I think this is late, but I think I had made errors in computing our currency into dollar. The judge ruled that, besides the remaining balance that we had paid, we should also get paid with the renovation expense. Investor wants to buy my house way over market value. Sure, no problem. Posted by DodoHead974. Background. My parents and their neighbor bought homes in an up-and-coming part of Florida 20 years ago. We're talking half-acre lots with 2,500 square foot homes for like $130,000. Our neighbor's home was a little smaller than my parents', no pool, and over the 20 years, the only thing done to the house was a new roof. Nothing else had been changed. Everything was still the original. Appliances, the paint, the AC unit, cabinets, tile, and carpet. I wish I could say that she took care of it and never needed to change things, but that wasn't the case. Or neighbor's house looked 20 years old. Well, she is a widow and the house is huge for just her, so she decided to sell and take advantage of the market. She listed it for $400,000. Despite never having put a penny into it, the house goes onto a bidding war and the top bidder is an investor from California. She offers to pay $30,000 over asking, pay the closing cost, and can do it the same day. Cue malicious compliance. The investor woman had 2 stipulations. Our neighbor takes the house off the market immediately, and she turns over the key to her management company with the cash for the home held in escrow until the key was turned over and our neighbor's side of the paperwork done. Now, our neighbor was upfront with this woman and the state of her home and asked if she wanted to have her management company come to look at it first. The woman says, "No, I'm renting the house and it doesn't need to be painted, just pull it off the market." This woman essentially bought the home for about $450,000 when it was all said and done. So our neighbor immediately goes to the management company office with her realtor, signs the paperwork, hands over the key, and gets the check for the home. A few days later, our neighbor gets a call from the investor lady. She is irate. The house is in disarray. It needs a paint job ASAP, new appliances and flooring at the least. She demands that our neighbor paint the house. She won't take ownership of the home until that is done. To which our neighbor responds to her, "It's not my home anymore. It was signed over to you and that check handed to me and cleared. That house is no longer my problem. Enjoy." This story all came about because yesterday my parents called our old neighbor. There was a for sale sign on the house again and we were confused. Our old neighbor promptly showed up and told us the story, and we are all laughing hysterically because the woman has it listed for $430,000, which anyone with eyes to tour it would never pay. And even if she did get it, she'd still be losing a crap ton of money. Who doesn't love a story when greedy investors trying to inflate the market lose and lose big? Sounds like she got a little greedy and it came back to bite her in the butt. Oh, it would suck to be that investor right now, wouldn't it? What would you do if you were OP? This crazy Karen story is called "Ignore the Red Lights and Cones at Your Peril," posted by Sevendori Native. About a decade ago, while I was waiting for my current department to hire, I took a job with a private EMS company as an EMTI on a fast response motorcycle unit, contracted out to our local freeway agency for accident response. It was an okay gig. Long hours and riding 300 plus kilometers every day killed my love of biking, but it beat the heck out of working on an ambulance. The same agency also staffed pickups with safety crews for the purpose of lane closures and scene safety. While we were a quasi-governmental unit, we had no real authority outside of that allowed to us by the Fire Brigade Services Act, and often had motorists ignore our suggestions when it came to not driving through accident scenes. This meant the police units still had to smack PPs occasionally, and it was usually quite fun to watch. I had the pleasure of working the same stretch of freeway as a certain Metro Police motor unit, and I watched him screw with people a few times, and two specific times come to mind. The first time I saw this salty old bugger use his power of craphousery was after a multi-vehicle pileup just after an aggressive bend in the freeway that closed down 3 of the 4 lanes of traffic, causing a line of cars that stretched for a few kilometers back around the bend, meaning that cars at the rear could not see what was causing the delay up front. A number of drivers decided that they were too important to wait and drove up the hard shoulder, half on the road and half on the grass, to mosey on by the accident scene, leaving the rule-abiding drivers to sit in the hot sun looking at us with dismay. After a few of them snuck by, nearly hitting crews who were busy treating patients and almost taking out a recovery vehicle, this absolute stud of a man got fed up and moved his bike into the shoulder, but in such a way that they weren't able to see him. Every car he stopped got told to park up and wait while he waited for his next victim. After he collected about a gaggle of 20 of them, he slowly made his way up the line, ticket book in hand, to have an unhurried chat with each driver individually. Not only did I get to watch each idiot eat an almighty fine for leaving the roadway and ignoring emergency vehicles, they also had the pleasure of sitting there as the scene was cleared before being allowed back into traffic, turning a 20-minute delay into nearly an hour of baking in the noonday sun. There was much gnashing of teeth and mutterings of, "Don't you have anything better to do, officer?" While that was pretty funny to me, the best I saw of him was a few months later when we got a call for a scrap metal hauler that was quite impressively overloaded that had managed to roll over while on the 2-lane overpass connecting the same national freeway to the city freeway that led into the industrial area south of the city center. This thing must have been pushing 40,000 kilograms when it wedged itself, nose against the right-hand concrete barrier and tail digging a deep gouge into the counterpart barrier on the left. This meant that there wasn't a ball hair on either side of the truck, and traffic was diverted at the entrance to the overpass, around 500 meters up from the scene. I didn't technically need to be there at this point, as the driver had been taken to the hospital and the road was closed, awaiting the arrival of 2 heavy rigs to lift and recover the truck and the contents. I was leaning on my Suzuki, perving over to this officer's BMW R1200 RT when we noticed that the crew of the safety unit at the closure was having difficulty with a vehicle that seemed to think they were above the law and were aggressively trying to get by the pickup, the cones, and the angry men in reflective gear. Seeing this and the potential for injury, he told them to wave the car through. As it zoomed down and then up to us on the top of the overpass, he winked at me, and when they stopped behind the very heavy and very wedged truck, he wandered over to have a chat with the driver, who was apparently the spokeswoman for the force-strong irritation of Karens within. The crux of his chat with her was that he certainly understood their point about needing to get to their highly important destination, but that the road that they had elected to use was currently blocked by 40 tons of mangled steel, and he was sure that they would agree that it would be dangerous for her to drive back against the traffic, considering that we had heavy rigs and support vehicles arriving and setting up. He apologized for the inconvenience, but directed them to park up by our bikes and wait for the rigs to do their thing, after which we could all be on our merry way. It took about an hour to get the road clear, after which they most definitely weren't making eye contact and appeared like beaten dogs as he finally wished them safe travels on their way. How would you handle this Karen story? It's called Entitled Couple Buy Our House, posted by Titanic Euphemism. So we recently went to auction and sold our house. The couple who purchased it turned out to be rude, entitled twerps. We were very thorough in preparing our sale documents, going above and beyond to detail all the renovation works that we've completed. Due to public holidays in our open house period, we also had more than the usual inspection times and even opened the house privately for some interested parties. There was ample opportunity for checking everything out. Auction went fine, but the first sign of trouble came after. The couple took nearly 2 hours to sign the contract. It's explained to them that this is an unconditional sale, as in they can't pull out of the sale for any reason without losing their deposit. They also can't request a building or pest inspection now and use the findings as a reason to come back out of the sale and then receive their deposit back. Those things are meant to be organized before purchase, or you just take your chances. That's how it works here when it's an auction. A private sale has different rules. They then asked to purchase some furniture, which we said that we'd think about. In the next days, the real estate agent starts plaguing us with a number of texts and calls, asking various questions about the property on behalf of the couple. What are the roof tiles made of? When did we last clean the roof? What is the deck made of? What's the material under the deck? Where's the storage battery for the solar panels? And finally, have we had the air conditioner serviced? And so on. We answer it all, but it starts to become annoying, and we advise the agents all of this info in either the ad or the building report. Or it should have been discussed before the purchase. It starts to become clear that the couple are wealthy investors who have moved from another country and just bought the house off the photos. They then demand a building inspection. Our conveyancer urgently advises against this. If they were to find pretense to pull out of the deal, then they would lose their deposit, yes, but then we would have no funds coming through for the settlement of our new house. We do not have any legal obligations to say yes, so I advise no. The agents harass us for a week, begging, but I tell them to drop the topic, and it's a definite no. The couple then asks to bring forward the settlement date. We're actually okay with this, but the lady we purchased our new house from is not. To make the money work, we need to settle the old and new houses on the same day, so we have to say no, or else we have to spend a lot of money putting ourselves up in a hotel for a few weeks. We can't afford that, and so we say no. This angers the couple, because then they have to pay extra rent where they're currently living. We apologize, but it's out of our hands. The agents harass us again on the couple's behalf, but we stay firm. Another barrage of questions about the house follow, which we answer. They then ask us which furniture we're selling them. Well, we decline to sell anything, as these people are just too much trouble. Then the couple ask for their pre-settlement inspection. Now, this is normal to check that nothing included in the sale contract has been moved from the home, like fixtures and fittings such as curtains and so on. It's legally not meant to be done until the 7 days before settling, and they request it 15 days out. We tried to tell them to come on the Monday or Tuesday before settlement so that the house is empty, and they refused. We end up saying yes, as we don't want them there while we have our storage containers on site and have scheduled time to be packing. We make it clear the house is not in final sale condition and they are agreeing to settle as is with our goods taken out, and they agree in writing. On inspection day, we happen to have an old couch on the nature strip awaiting hard rubbish collection. It's been completely torn up by our cats, and not even any of the neighborhood scavengers have collected it. They are clearly upset that we didn't sell the furniture to them, and they accuse us of dumping rubbish on their property. We remind them it's not theirs yet and show them the council booking slip for collection. We drove around the block at inspection time and settled in the court opposite and watched them bring someone who we highly suspect was a builder on site without our permission. Couldn't prove it though. Finally, we are packing our storage containers the weekend before settlement. We take a 5-minute break and sit inside with the front door and container door open, keeping an ear out if anyone starts sniffing about our goods. Lo and behold, we hear people walking around in the driveway next to our containers. I am out of my seat like a shot and instantly saw these guys are builders measuring our fence. I demand to know what they think they're doing. They say they were told no one would be there and they were allowed in. I snapped and screamed at them that this was still my property, that they didn't have permission to be there and to leave. They refused and said, "Oh, we'll be just a minute doing this." I said no, they were trespassing and to get out. They start walking over to me being threatening and intimidating, getting in my personal space. Now, I'm a woman under 5 feet and I'm an easy target in their eyes, I guess. At this point, they look up and see that my very tall and large husband is coming toward them and hot-footed to their car. I call the agents and my conveyancer in a rage and let them know this is completely unacceptable and I will call the police if they are seen again, and the couple deny that they sent them. The day of settlement comes and all is good for the money. We hand our keys over and breathe a sigh of relief that this is all over. But it isn't. We get an angry email from the couple's conveyancer claiming that we left goods on the property and didn't leave it in fit condition for settlement, and that as his client wasn't allowed on the property, he couldn't check for this properly. We reminded the conveyancer that his client already put it in writing that they came to inspect too early and accepted the condition of the house. He attaches pictures of the goods that they want picked up. It's a bag of rubbish that we forgot in the shed, probably from the day their builders came and we were distracted. In the photo are also things like spare fence pickets and roof tiles, which we left as a courtesy. Fine, we say, this is all too hard, we'll come and get it. So we have to get permission to go on the property as it's not ours anymore. My husband gets there and starts packing up everything in the photo. The owners freak out and demand that he leave everything there. My husband refuses until they put it in writing what they want left. Begrudgingly, they write that they want the fence pickets and all the spare bathroom and roof tiles left. Then my husband takes the paint tins that we left. Remember, we just renovated before we sold, so we left some paint for touch-ups. They want him to leave it all there, but they refuse to put it in writing, so he takes it all and snail pellets too. Oh well, the garden has a massive snail problem, but they can pay out of their own pocket to deal with that now. In the end, all they really wanted gone was the bag of rubbish and the decorative steel panels at the back of the house, which we left as a fixture and fitting as per contract. But anyway, they just made a fuss as retaliation about the builder to inconvenience us. The icing on the cake? They demanded my husband change the alarm code for them on his way out. He told them no, it was not his responsibility to do that, and also he had left them detailed written instructions on how to do it themselves. They said they couldn't figure it out, and he shrugged and told them to get a technician and then walked out. By contrast, at our new home, the previous owner left us a long handwritten letter explaining how the house works, some menus of her favorite takeout, and her number if there were any questions. She left us spare light globes, electrical parts, fittings, and spare floorboards. We were happy about that, as we intend to change out the old carpet and can now match the rest of the flooring. We found that she left behind some handwritten recipes and cookbooks. We texted her thanks for the note, and would she like her books? She was so grateful. That's how it should have gone. The people we sold to were so awful to deal with. If they had been nicer, we would have left the couple a handwritten note of our own, explaining to avoid the neighbor on the right, as he has no sense of social norms and the only way to get him to leave is to slam the door in his face. Oh, and he also has a severe pest problem on his property. It's a giant forest in suburbia and he doesn't maintain it. Oh well. Hope they don't mind rodents, ticks, and all manner of spiders, including nests of redbacks, jumping jack ants, eastern brown snakes, and foxes. Or grass that is as tall as your shoulders. We would also have explained to avoid the neighbor to the left, who we were sure was a drug dealer, bikies at his house at all hours, and constantly having roof plumbing done, pressure washes his truck most days to clean the residue. And in his off time, he plays with power tools in a manner that can only be described as grinding a block of steel. Looking back, actually, it wasn't a great place to live. Hope they enjoy. What do you think those Karens are going to do when they find out what their place is really like? Way to go, OP. What do you think? Karen doesn't like people parking in front of her house, posted by the Fallen Polish. So, when I was around 6 years old, I lived with my family in a nice house in a small city in Poland. It was a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts, and pretty much all the neighbors knew each other. There were no sidewalks around the part of the street that I lived at, only one crappy sidewalk that started on the other side in front of my neighbor's house. It's important to remember that the sidewalk was very old and in bad shape. Still, to this day, people are asking the city to fix it. This story is about that neighbor, Karen. She was an older lady, and everyone suspected that she really didn't have anything better to do than gather gossip and disturb everyone trying to rule the street. Everyone was commenting that if you wanted to get the whole area to know something, you had to tell her that message as a secret. Whenever someone came to visit us, they usually parked their car in front of our property. But on bigger meetups, like barbecues or parties, people would park in front of our closest neighbors' houses too. That never was a problem. No gates were obstructed and no one was disturbed. Well, almost. Karen hated when someone parked in front of her house. She would always run out yelling about, "How dare you park your filthy cars on my precious sidewalk?" My mother is not someone that lets someone yell at her. She had many discussions with Karen about the laws and rules that stated that she doesn't own anything outside of her fence, which means that the sidewalk is public and anyone can park on it as long as they leave enough space for a wheelchair to pass. That wasn't enough. Every time someone would come to us and park their car there, the yelling would start, until one time when my mother's friend, Tomek, came for a coffee during winter. He's a local policeman and his specialty is road law. So my mother tells him about Karen and her behavior regarding the sidewalk. Tomek laughs since that thing was in such bad shape that it can barely even be called a sidewalk. When he was leaving, he assured my mom that he would step by next day for coffee on his lunch break. The next day comes by and I was playing with my brother in the snow. We see a black car pulling over in front of Karen's house, and as the driver gets out, Karen storms out of her house yelling, "You can't park here. This is my sidewalk. Get your filthy car off my prop." Well, there he was, Tomek, with his full uniform, hat and all, turning around towards Karen as comically as he could. "Excuse me? You tell me that I can't park my car here?" Yes. "But this is a sidewalk open to the public." "Yes, this is my sidewalk." "So, let me get this right. This is your sidewalk?" "Yes." "And you are the one responsible for taking care of it?" Proudly, Karen replies, "Well, yes, I am. That's why I don't allow anyone to park here." "Oh, that's so nice that I found you. Since it's your sidewalk, you are responsible for clearing the snow from it to not create danger for the people walking on it. Since it was not plowed, I need to write you a fine for endangering public safety," he says as he pulls out his notebook. "But no other sidewalks are plowed." "Oh, it doesn't matter. The other sidewalks belong to the city. The clearing crew is working on cleaning them. But since this sidewalk is yours, it is your responsibility." "But I'm old. I can't shovel the snow." "Then you need to hire someone to do that. Of course, if this sidewalk happened to be of public property..." Yes, it's not mine." "No." But a moment ago you were yelling at me that it was. So what is it? Is it yours or not? Because I don't know if I should fine you now." "No, it's not mine." "Alright, seems we've cleared that up. Now, if you ever harass anyone like you did with me, it could result in a fine. So, I recommend you watching out on what you claim to be yours." And then he proceeded to cross the street and enjoy a coffee in our house. Karen never disturbed anyone for parking in front of her house again. She would only stare at people trying to burn holes in their skulls with her sight. I love this story because I didn't expect the cop to come out in full uniform and then just make it awkward for her, and really did an awesome job. Way to go. Watch how OP handles this HOA who illegally fines him, trespasses, threatens, and he's not even part of the HOA. As requested, here's another HOA story by Dragon Rider 1964. My great-grandfather purchased 3,000 acres in Florida in the 1800s. It's been in the family and a working farm ever since. After my father passed, the land was divided between my brother and sister and me. My brother and sister sold their portions to a development company, and at the same time, I purchased a neighboring 850 acres. On to the story. After the development company built up the area with single-family homes, they transferred control to a new HOA, which became officially registered in 2016. It was at this time that unstamped letters began appearing in my mailbox. The first was an introduction of the new HOA and included about a 20-page CCR that was essentially a contract and had so many rules and regulations. Since my family land predates the HOA by well over 120 years, I'm not obliged to join any such group. So I ignore the letters and start marking them Return to Sender. Now this alerts my postal carrier, who questions who put unstamped mail in the mailbox. And he took those letters and went to have a conversation with the HOA about illegal use of the mailbox. Now, while this is a farm, I was not using it fully, but instead I had at the time about a dozen rescue animals as well as 3 quarter horses. I arrived home to find a pair of cars at the entrance of my driveway, blocking my access. My driveway is almost a quarter-mile long, so I parked and I walked. At my house, I found my wife arguing with 3 people, 2 men and a woman, who are demanding to be allowed their rights to search my property inside and out. After a quick briefing, I inform my trespassers of their violations. I then give them 10 minutes to get off of my property and move their cars before I tow and impound them. Those self-righteous individuals were not budging, so I walk to one of my barns and start up something inside, and back out with an older model Holmes tow truck and start backing down the driveway. These 3 ran to get in their cars and they were gone before I got to the end of the driveway. Now, this would be nice if it ended there, but then it wouldn't be much of a story. I started receiving fines, yes, in the mail and unstamped. Actually had to get the local postmaster involved. Illegal use of the mail system, and mailboxes are a part of that, are a federal crime. I even got a fine for calling the postmaster on them. The HOA had to pay a $10,000 fine for unauthorized use of the USPS system. Fast forward about 6 months, and my wife notices there's a lien on the house and the property. This is where I contacted a property rights attorney, who immediately filed with the local government and finance agencies that are dispute to the legality of this lien. It took a couple months, but the lien was dismissed when the originator failed to show up to a hearing. But it does not end here. Oh no, it does not. I received a large packet that came certified mail detailing all the fines that I have incurred since the HOA came into existence, and they demanded immediate payment. Included in this was a $500 fine for not signing the CC&Rs, a $1,000 fine for not allowing the board members access to search my property, a $10,000 fine for repayment of fine the HOA had to pay for the HOA breaking federal law. And the list goes on and on. My attorney laughed and sent a cease and desist letter, as well as a demand that all further correspondence may be directed to her office. That lasted about 6 months until my wife again noticed a new lien on the property. What? I thought. So back to my attorney and more laughing. Turns out the HOA put a lien on the land I had purchased, which is still separate from the family land, and so we repeat the steps above. During this time, while my wife was in the hospital for delivery of our second child, everyone was there to support her. The HOA trespassed again and started searching through my property, including its barns, garage, and outbuildings. They even tried towing several vehicles that I had on the land that were not licensed. Yeah, they're for farm use. Picture a rusty old pickup used to haul hay and feed, an old car with no doors we used to check out the field and search for animals. Now they were caught in the act by the local sheriff's deputy who was just doing a drive-by. No one was arrested, and I chose not to press charges. However, this infuriated the HOA, and another large packet arrived with more fines on top of all the previous fines. Another trip to my attorney, and more laughing, and this time she contacts the county clerk's office and manages to stop another lien that was in process of being posted. This time, in order to post the lien, the HOA would need to show up at a hearing and explain. Yeah, they did not show up, and the lien vanished. Now, just a reminder that this is in Florida. My family and property are not part of any HOA. How would you deal with this insanity? They really crossed the line, didn't they? Old guy swipes my shopping cart with his Prius, expects to trade vehicle insurance, posted by Calidus. I'm still shaking my head over this. It happened several months ago. I was getting ready for a home project and had picked up some corrugated steel roofing, a load of lumber, and 4 bags of construction sand from the local big box home improvement store, the orange one. The lumber was over 12 feet long, and everything fit on one cart. My pickup truck was parked in the parking lot, and I planned to push the cart there to load it, just like hundreds of other customers do. There is a high awning at the store exit, and after that, there's the parking lot. There is no pedestrian painted crosswalk, but this is California. Parking lots are pedestrian right-of-way. Anyway, I check both ways before pushing this heavy, long, and unwieldy load into the parking lot. I let the Jeep coming from my right go by. The Prius on my left is a long way away, so off I go. I didn't realize how fast the Prius was going, almost 40 miles per hour. I had about 8 feet of lumber into the parking lot when he drove up on me. He swerved to miss, so he didn't hit me head on, but he did kiss the load of 4x8s with his right front quarter panel. The wood then laid a perfect crease all the way down the side of his shiny Prius, all the way back to his rear quarter panel. With 200 pounds of sand, another 200 to 300 pounds of wood, and maybe 100 pounds of steel, the cart didn't move. Heck, the wood wasn't even damaged. The driver stopped almost 30 feet away, put his car in park, and came to check damage. He was old. Look, I'll be 60 this year, but I guessed he was easily 20 years older. Skinny and looking like dried jerky, but spry enough and alert. We asked each other if we were okay, and he checked the damage on his car, and out of habit, I took photos of the damage, his license plate, my cart, and the area. Then he came up and asked to trade vehicle insurance. I laughed in his face. My truck gets parked way over there. Why would I give you insurance on it? He got upset and asked me how I was going to pay for his car. I pointed out that he technically hit a pedestrian in a pedestrian area, was going too fast, and saw me enter his path from 50 feet away. He had plenty of time to halt and let me cross. He was upset and then hit on the bright idea that maybe the store was at fault and liable for parking lot accidents, and he said he was going to talk to the manager. After he left, I decided I wanted to stick around and see what happened, but I needed my stuff loaded. So I left my cart parked out of the way, and I brought my truck under the awning and started loading. The old guy and the manager came out, and once the manager understood what happened, she explained how the store was not liable. He talked about suing the store, and she shrugged and told him to, go ahead. The company lawyers would take care of it. But since he said lawsuit, she couldn't talk anymore, and she left. He came back over to me and asked, how was I going to make this right? I told him nicely that since I had no damage, I didn't need anything from him running into me. He said I ran into him. Really? Look at your front quarter panel. And that he was calling the cops. Okay, dude, you do that. I know something about the cops in this city. Unless there's a shootout, a lot of money, a lot of drugs, or a body, their response time can be measured in hours. Or never. So I went back and finished loading my truck, and then I got in and sat in the AC to cool off. Finally, I wrote my name on a paper and my telephone number. I gave it to the guy and told him to give it to the cops when they arrived. And then I left. About 5 hours later, a cop called and asked to trade information about the guy, basically driver's license info. They were still at the store. The guy sounded frustrated. So I read off the details of my license, and the cop read off the details of his license. No insurance info was traded. He just wanted to know who to sue. The cop emphasized the gentleman's birth date. That's when I learned he was 98 years old. Good on him for keeping his license. The cop also emphasized that this was a civil matter and the old guy could sue. I said that I understood and I looked forward to it. I've received no court summons, no other action, and my backyard goldfish pond is still in work. How old did you expect the guy to be? Because I wasn't ready for 98. What about you? HOA members want to force me to move my food garden, posted by Estranged Emu. My next door neighbors are HOA board members, and I assume they don't appreciate my small garden of fruit trees, bushes, and greens in pots. They have talked to me about the garden before, but never anything negative about it. After months of gardening, I just got an email from the HOA saying that I need to move my garden because it is unsightly and a nuisance. I assume that this is because this is the closest bylaw they could find that would work to force me to move the plants. My cars in the driveway block the plants from street view 80% of the time, and I even work from home. I would deem unsightly needs to be seen. I wish my neighbors or anyone on the board would have just had a discussion with me about it, rather than try and misconstrue verbiage of our bylaws and claim the garden is a nuisance. They claim that potted plants are not a problem to have, only mine in particular. I would have been happy to comply originally, but now I am too angry to. So by their wording, I should be able to keep my potted plants where they are, as long as I make them somehow not unsightly, while they have not expanded upon what makes it unsightly. I assume because I'm growing food and not just flowers and decorative plants. My neighbors recently built a fence and attached it to my fence without my permission. I never said anything about it, but now I am eager to give them a written letter telling them they need to disconnect from my fence and build their own. My friends and family all have strongly advised not doing this, but I'm obviously more upset about it than they are. OP gives an update to unsightly being up to interpretation and potentially suing the HOA. That's reassuring to hear. The bylaw is clearly not written at all. Would I have to wait until they find me to take action? I've always heard from others, take that as it is, that the HOA is usually the winner. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I know I enjoy the garden, and my kids love being able to grab a strawberry when we're leaving the house. There are other properties in the approximately 100-house HOA that have tomatoes on their front door and pots leading down their entire driveway. HOA story time. Neighbor not in my CCRs says he's going to sue me to enforce the camping vehicle rule, posted by HP Dork. So, long story short, I've lived in the house for 7 years. One neighbor comes up and hands me a letter to remove my motorhome from my driveway in 30 days based on the CCRs. Never even knew they existed, and neither did my other neighbor who's lived there for 15 years. Apparently, my house, along with the house north and south of me, form a subdivision with CCRs. I found the paperwork, and the original hugely vague CCRs do mention no camping vehicles are allowed in the subdivision unless loading or unloading. I quote the word subdivision because our houses are literally side by side on a public country road. I did some digging and I found out the previous owner parked a camper and fifth wheel on the property for 10 years without anyone saying anything. So I told the other neighbor this, and he basically tucked tail and conceded. Turns out, my neighbor across the street, who isn't in the CCRs, is ticked about the motorhome and basically using my neighbor, who is in the CCRs, to get me to move it. So I went over, and dude was complete butt. We always talk to each other weekly when we see each other outside and everything. Now he's all, "You're not being neighborly," and all that. Then he says he's prepared to sue me. Like, okay, bud, you have no leg to stand on, but feel free to bring a frivolous lawsuit against me. I'm not going to push it in the heat of things, OP updates. The other neighbors just want to stay out of everything for now. I'll probably just push for a vote to just remove the CCRs altogether and be done with it all. This story contains one of the worst Karens I've ever read about on this channel. I'm not even kidding. It's called Entitled Roommate and Landlord Put Me Through Heck. Get ready and buckle up. It's a wild ride. I, then 20, now 21, am autistic, have memory problems, and at the time worked a full-time job as a cashier and made enough money to want to move closer to work. As I was scrolling through posts, I found one about a family with a giant house looking for a roommate. The family was basically a man, woman, a daughter, and the man's father. The rent was cheap, it looked amazing, and the description was perfect for me. I quickly texted, and my first question was about pets, as I have an emotional support dog. Long story short, I met them and set my boundaries, stating that if they accept me, that I wanted them to know that I am sensitive to yelling and violence due to my autism and PTSD. They were fine with it and stated that, just like normal people, they had small arguments, but they kept it in the confines of their private room, which turned out to be a lie. I ended up living with them for about 6 months, and this is what made me leave. After moving in, it seemed okay at first, until the man and woman, who was a couple, would have screaming fights in the shared living room where I could hear everything in my bedroom. And then the man, who was technically the landlord but didn't work and made small money online, became a drunk. He drank every night, which at first I was okay with because it didn't bother me, but then he began to get violent when drunk. His first suspiciously violent outburst I noticed when he lifted the dining room table and kept on moving it while drunk. I was making Christmas letters at the table at the time and had to stop and continue the next day because I couldn't work like that. He was laughing, so I was a little shaken, but not in fear of my life. After that, he announced that he was quitting drinking as he noticed it was affecting those around him, which outside I told him congratulations, and inside I was relieved. I felt safer knowing an outburst wouldn't happen again. Boy, was I wrong. A week later, he started drinking more than ever. It was just after Christmas, and I was baking in the kitchen for a Christmas party at a coworker's and friend's place. The household knew ahead of time that I was going to be baking. The plan was, the coworkers pick me up that night with the desserts, spend the night, and then enjoy the party the next day. Before I got started baking, I noticed that the only brown sugar in the house was hard, and I understand that you can still use hard brown sugar, but I figured I can buy some on my own since my coworkers have texture problems like I do, so I didn't want to risk them biting a chunk of brown sugar, and it was no problem since I had to go to the store to get something else anyways. So I told the man that I was walking to the store for brown sugar. It was a 2-minute walk, and then left. I came back a few minutes later. He says, "I was trying to tell you before you left that we have brown sugar here." And I say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you, but I know, I just wanted to get some that wasn't hard." "You can still use it if it's hard." "I know, I just wanted some that wasn't." "That's just a waste of money." "I know, but it's my money to waste." Just to let everyone reading know, I never used anyone else's money for any food or anything while I lived there. If I wanted something, I bought it myself, even if it would end up being shared between everyone. And then the woman, who was dating the man, said to the man, "Babe, if she wants to buy stuff herself, she can, it's her money." Then the man huffed, and I got to baking. As I was baking, the man kept drinking. The man, woman, me, and our new roommate, who just moved in approximately a month prior, was there. I was getting all my baking stuff around when I noticed the sugar was on the counter behind the man's chair. The man was not in his chair. I assumed he got up to go get something, so I walked over and went to gently move his chair just an inch to the side. His chair was a desk chair with wheels, so that I could grab the sugar, and when the man suddenly jumped into his chair, sitting down and blocking me from reaching the sugar. I looked at him, stunned for a moment because he came out of nowhere and I noticed he was already drunk. I say, excuse me, but could I get the sugar? I don't know, can ya? I was talking softly and carefully throughout the conversation as I knew he was drunk. Well, your chair is blocking me. Could I please get the sugar? Why don't you just push me aside like you always do? That made me confused. What? I'm not pushing you. You were going to. You could ask and not be rude. I'm sorry, but I wasn't going to push you. I was only gently moving your chair to get some sugar. You were going to shove me. That's rude. I just wanted to end the conversation and beg. I'm sorry. Can you please allow me to get the sugar? I don't know. You were going to push me. The woman says, babe, just let her get the sugar. It's just right there. Then he scooted the chair so I could get the sugar, and then I started baking. As I was baking, the man drank more. The man talking to me said, you like to shove people around, don't you? Wait, what? You know you shoved me aside without a word before. Wait, no, what? Honestly, I was confused at this. I hadn't remembered ever shoving him. Ever. Just over there, pointing to the dishwasher, you shoved me to get past before and you didn't apologize or anything. Honestly, the kitchen was extremely small. I don't remember ever shoving him or bumping into him, but with how small the kitchen was, it was likely that I accidentally bumped into him at one point in the past and I didn't notice. Oh, I don't remember, but I'm sorry if I did. Oh, I remember everything. It was about a month after you moved in or so. I was standing near the dishwasher in the sink when you passed me by and you shoved me, without a single word of apology. I'm sorry, I don't remember that, as I have memory problems, but if it happened, then it was an accident, and I apologize. He then huffed, and I was left to baking more. I was confused as to why he'd mentioned something that may have happened 5 months prior. Honestly, after that, some details for a while I can't remember, as it's all a blur since I tried not to acknowledge what was going on around me. So skip maybe 20 to 30 minutes after that. I was sitting in the dining room and kitchen with the man, the woman, and the new roommate still there, and I was waiting for the cookies to cool before putting them into the cookie tin that I had so that the cookies didn't stick together. The main things I remember is the man kept drinking and getting frustrated over nothing, even getting annoyed to where with my last batch of cookies, he started grabbing them and throwing them into my tin without letting them cool even when the woman was trying to stop him, saying, babe, stop, her cookies are still cooling. But he wouldn't listen. One of the cookies broke, and since he seemed interested in the cookies, I decided to be nice and offer him the broken one to try. He smiled, took the cookie, and threw it away in the trash can behind him. I ignored everything, hoping time would pass faster, waiting for my coworkers to pick me up. The back door was connected to the kitchen, so I just stayed in the kitchen, waiting as I planned to go out the back door to my coworker's car, and I didn't want to go upstairs to my room as I didn't trust the man with my desserts. I was afraid he would break them while I was gone. So I sat on my phone to distract my brain from everything going on. Again, this part is blurry since I was distracting myself from what was going on, but I remember feeling scared and just trying not to think about that feeling. But the man started to argue with our new roommate over literally nothing. Our roommate stayed calm and kept seated while the man stood up, asking the roommate if he wanted to fight. The main thing I remember is the man standing up, yelling, and saying something like, "You're no good, don't pay rent." The roommate has not paid rent, which was agreed on before he moved in until he got a stable job, and waste space. I deserve better. We deserve better. The woman's daughter deserves better. She deserves so much better. The sentence about the woman's daughter made no sense. She lives with us, but no one had even mentioned her, and the roommate wasn't even part of the woman's daughter's life. The roommate, calm and still sitting down, says, "Man, I know. No one has even mentioned her. I know I don't pay rent. I will pay once I'm able to get out of this slump, which you agreed to when I moved in." The man, still standing and yelling, says, "Well, I don't agree to it now. You get out of my house. The woman's daughter deserves better than you." The woman, while holding the man's arm, "Babe, sit down. No one has even mentioned her. I don't know what's gotten into you." My roommate, still sitting calmly, says, "If you want me out, I'll get out, but you gotta talk to me calmly, man. I don't plan on not paying you, and you know this. You don't need to act as if I'm just against you all the time. I don't understand your problem with me." "My problem?" the man shouts. "My problem is you not being able to pay frickin' rent and her," pointing to me, "shoving people aside." At this point, my brain only comprehended me being mentioned, so I just looked up from my phone and said, "Huh?" "Yeah, you two," pointing back and forth between me and him, "are in cahoots, aren't you? You plan on both not paying and running off somewhere cheap." Honestly, I had, and still have, no idea where that came from. I hardly spoke 2 words to the new roommate, and I hardly knew his name, and we never even texted each other. The only time we ever really talked was to trade Pokemon on Pokemon Go. Plus, I always paid rent, even paying ahead of time, and I was never late and never said that I wouldn't pay. Wait, what? We barely talk or know each other. Bullcrap. You two plan on teaming up together and leaving us in the dust with no income. I know it. I'm smarter than you think I am. I have a college freaking degree. At that point, I just didn't respond, and I went back in my phone to distract my brain from everything going on because I was afraid of what was going to happen if I responded or cried. Roommate replies, "Man, chill. Nothing's going on. OP's just minding her own business, and we hardly know each other. Why would we go and try to go against you? Why do you think all men are against you? Does my existence threaten you? Does it bother you that there's another man in the house? You are against me. You want to fight like a real man? Come on, you and your crappy tattoos, get up now and fight me." The man was standing even closer to the roommate, but roommate didn't seem to mind. He didn't seem to want to agitate the situation. Roommate replies, "Man, I'm not going to get up and I'm not going to fight you." Now this is a part that I saw because it was literally out of nowhere. The roommate put his bottle of alcohol on his mouth to take a sip, and the man smacked the roommate's bottle out of his mouth, making his mouth bleed. Alcohol splattered everywhere and onto me, and then I looked at roommate and saw his mouth bleeding. I looked at him with concern because, well, his mouth was bleeding. The roommate, "Oh man, why'd you do that? God, my mouth is bleeding." The man, seeing me looking at roommate, "See, you're in cahoots. Why do you care about the moochin' broke bee so much?" "He's hurt. His mouth is bleeding." "I'm okay," roommate says. "It's just a small cut, but man, that was uncalled for. What did I do to deserve that?" Then I can't remember much after that, but I do remember, very shortly after, I know that I needed to get out of the house immediately because I feared for my life. It got to where I was so scared that my legs felt like jelly and my trauma was coming back to me. I got up to go where some of my desserts were so I could take them outside when the man shouts, "Where do you think you're going?" My feet paused, and I turned to see the man started walking a few steps toward me in a threatening way. I was afraid of what he was going to do to me. I thought I'd be hit, or worse, but I didn't know what to do or even say. And then the roommate called out to the man, distracting him from me. "Hey, let her go. She's getting away from here like a reasonable person. You let her go." Then the roommate gave me a look that seemed to say, "I got this. You go." So I gathered all my things and ran out the back door and started on the back door steps trying to figure out what to do since I didn't feel safe. A few minutes went by as I was texting my coworkers, telling them everything and asking about bringing my dog and staying with them for a bit. Then I heard voices coming from the front porch. I listened in to make sure it wasn't the man's voice, and it was roommate's voice. I ran to the voice, afraid of what happened, and then I saw cop cars. "Hey, what's going on?" The roommate said, "OP, you okay? I called the cops because of that bee assaulting me. You hanging in there?" Then I just said, "Thank you," and bursted a cry of relief. I felt safe outside where the police were, and I was glad to see roommate was okay. Then roommate held out his arms, and I cried for a while as he was telling me, "It's okay, you're safe, he's not going to hurt you," and I just kept on repeating, "Thank you," over and over. It seemed roommate got done with the police mainly, but I could see woman and man spying through the glass of the front door, with them saying, "OP is there, what's she doing there?" I felt scared to step in there. The police asked if we had a place to stay, and roommate said he was unsure of what to do long term, but he could find some place overnight, but his stuff was in the house. I told the police that I was going to leave and not live with them again because I felt unsafe. The police agreed and talked to the man and woman and told them that they are to let us grab our stuff and everyone decide what to do in the future later. After the police left, I went inside to grab my dog because I was afraid they were going to hurt her. I grabbed my dog, and as I was leaving with her out the back door, the man kept on trying to say that I didn't need to leave and that it was all roommate's fault, and that B is no good and running a perfectly good thing. I sat outside with my dog and my stuff, and my coworker picked me up, and I cried until I reached their place. I felt sick and dizzy. I felt dehydrated but nauseous all at the same time. We got to their house, and my friends helped me up the stairs and onto the floor as I was so dizzy I just needed to lie down. It's really hard to describe the feeling. Like everything was a dream, but it repeated in my head over and over. The more that it repeated, the more I cried, and the more I cried, the more I felt like I was just going to faint. I had one of the friends there and take my phone away from me because man and woman were blowing it up, telling me to not move and that I over-exaggerated the situation by leaving, even going so far as accusing me of being with roommate. And also, when I told them I was leaving permanently, the man tried telling me that I was too young and irrational to make a decision and not mature enough. Long story short, after I calmed down, I got sick. I got really sick. I've never been so sick in my life. I made a deal to have 3 days to leave, cause in 3 days I'd have to pay the next month's rent. I spent the time working while sick, while broke, and while living with my coworkers while finding a place to live. Eventually, another coworker who knew of my situation sent me a link to an apartment for rent that I moved into on the deadline. I moved out with help from my mother, stepdad, and amazing friends. Admittedly, I was living off of $3 for a bit, but taxes came in and I was on my feet in no time and now live happily and also got a second dog to keep my emotional therapy dog company. About 2 or 3 weeks later, the man in the woman's house burnt down. Did they do it themselves because they couldn't afford it without my rent? Who knows, but it was either that or righteous karma. An update. I'm not sure about roommate, honestly. The day after the incident, the man was texting me trying to say I overreacted and saying that roommate went back and apologized for the situation, so why am I making this harder and not coming back? So far as I know, he went back, but I don't think he was there the day of the fire. And yeah, with the brown sugar, I really didn't have time for that, so I just got a new one which was faster. This takes the cake for one of the most insane stories I have read about neighbors to date, and I am so thankful that OP is in a good place and that I have never had to experience this myself. This is mental. What do you think? There are no words to describe this insanity. This HOA Karen lies about a position of power, has cars towed, and then says the cops are lying with their rules. How can they shut her down? This story is posted by Proctologist. This incident occurred approximately July 2023. I moved into a lovely townhome community located in Pasco County, Florida, and immediately took notice of the parking situation. A family resident member's vehicle received a sticker on the driver's window stating illegally parked, with the added threat of being subsequently towed. The vehicle did not block traffic, nor did it impede the road throughway whatsoever. In fact, 95% of the vehicle was on or over the driveway. When we politely asked why in a private Facebook group, we were immediately informed via an authoritative response from the group's self-appointed moderator, whose words spoke on behalf of the HOA. We have had to agree to certain rules by the county or we will be fined again. The moderator continued, all the tires have to be on the pavers. After we responded for clarification, the moderator barked. The rules state that all 4 tires, and actually the rear end of the car, need to be on the pavers. She apparently appears to speak on behalf of the HOA, did not make the rules, and actually no part of the vehicle can be on the street. If we do not comply with the rules, then the HOA is the one that is fined $5,000 per incident, which is then passed on to the owners. We cannot afford to do that. As an aside, I have resided in this same Florida county for over 20 years and have never heard of this excessive rule and law. Hence, I reached out to a few friends who are Pasco Sheriff, as well as the Pasco Code Compliance, all of which irrefutably stated that the moderator's words were 100% false and uncorroborated, nor is the slightly protruding vehicle a county offense. I captured screenshots of the discussion with the moderator as appeared on our private Facebook group, that is, prior to the moderator deleting the entire discussion and blocking our account from further interaction. Talk about suppression of our rights to free speech and our qualification as residents to question policy per the threat that she made against us by someone claiming to represent the HOA. I have reported her full name, place of business, a RE/MAX realtor, and the discussion to the sheriff's department. This community of townhomes offers very small driveways, enough for one vehicle only. Many residents, like us, utilize their garage for storage, water softener equipment, and so on, and therefore cannot park inside the equally tiny garage. Moreover, their limited guest spaces are near always unavailable. The bottom line is that this excessive parking policy seems to negatively impact the morale of the community, other than a few people who seem bothered by otherwise trivial matters. I've spoken with numerous neighbors who stated that their grief with this excessive driveway rule and would like to see it amended and relaxed. We spoke today with a neighbor on our street whose car was towed after only 20 minutes passed, unbeknownst to them, at a cost of $200. Why is a community spokesperson spreading disinformation? More importantly, why is the moderator spreading disinformation? The sheriff's department was quick to say that nearly all HOAs lie, playing good cop, bad cop, blaming their department for the HOA's often excessive and nonsensical policies set by a few Karens. In our case, the sheriff's department was not in agreement or support of her authoritative comments. In fact, the active LEO with whom I spoke stated that the sheriffs do not ticket and citation for such parking matters. In fact, they would ticket for a blocked fire hydrant, but even in that situation, the ticket would go to the owner of the vehicle and not the HOA, as misrepresented by the moderator. Additionally, their largest, most aggressive fine is $500, not $5,000 as stated by the moderator. They concluded stating, "No one has the right to tow your vehicles, especially claiming that it's a county violation." And, most importantly, the sheriff department said the HOA cannot supersede county laws and ordinance. In the days that followed, the moderator of the private Facebook group threatened and carried out the threat to kick members from her own private group if they contribute to these horror stories. Moderators, especially those representing a community such as she, self-appointed, should remain unbiased and professional. Unfortunately, the contrary has occurred. Some examples of this ludicrous policy from our open to the public community roads serving as proof that the residents want and need to park this way, and in doing so does not whatsoever impede traffic. Yes, it may cause a small few people to experience hurt feelings and require safe space recuperation, but by no means were any county laws broken. Update from OP, replying to a comment that says, "Nothing stops you from starting an HOA Facebook page, unofficial also of course, and inviting your neighbors." OP says, "That is precisely what occurred as a result of the mod's bullying bias. The mod is a self-professed volunteer, i.e. a neighborhood resident, Karen, who demonstratively leverages her role as the private group's admin to bully residents, renters and owners alike, into submission by 1. Falsely blaming policy enforcement on the local sheriff's department, 2. Removing community members' right to question and or politely protest policy by blocking them from her private group and deleting their inquiries, and 3. Literally threatening and executing removal of her group's joined members, merely for joining a new public group that was created for the community's residents to openly and without bias share their concerns, insight, and so on. When we speak directly with neighbors, we have yet to meet a single one who agrees with the overreaching parking rules, such as one's vehicle and its entire chassis must sit 100% vertically over the driveway pavers or be fined and or towed. Neighbors have to play musical cars and or squeeze their vehicles into the equally small garage and driveway. Who designs a home with a single car driveway? The HOA's excessive policy only adds insult to injury. We respect laws. When they seem outside of logic and reason, they should be open to revisit. We should show zero respect towards bullies and keyboard cowards. Rules aren't meant to be permanent. Look at the world in which we live today, for example. Open, healthy debate is what makes America great, and precisely what a certain party is working overtime to remove from citizens. Shutting down free speech is exactly what the go-to is in this mess in the first place. We refuse to allow it to infiltrate our neighborhood and domicile. Rude, inconsiderate neighbors. Appreciate any help or thoughts. Posted by Limp Initial 6478. I, a 27 female, and my boyfriend, 27 male, recently bought our first home in a townhome community. It's a nice starter home with 2 bedrooms, 2 full baths, and a decently sized backyard for our 2 dogs. We live on the bottom floor of our 2-story building, and since we moved in, our living situation has been quite unpleasant. Don't get me wrong, we love having a place to call our own, but our neighbors that live in the unit directly above us are the most inconsiderate, unhygienic, miserable people that I've ever come across. I didn't even know that there are people who exist with such little self-awareness and regard for others. Here are most of the instances that have happened that made me despise them. First off, they are heavy smokers of both legal and illegal substances. Now, I don't care if people smoke, to each their own, but most days it smells like they're hotboxing their house. The smoke seeps through our bathroom vents and through our windows, fills our house to the point that I feel like I'm secondhand smoking. I'm pretty sure they are not supposed to be smoking in their house per the community's house rules, plus there are designated smoking areas. On top of the smell, we constantly find cigarette butts, ashes, and lighters in our backyard and in front of our front door. They have a small balcony that sits right above our back porch and a foyer that extends above our entrance. They also disgustingly cough a lot, like all hours of the day, and spit off of their overhang onto what is our property. Secondly, on top of being heavy smokers, they're also heavy drinkers. On at least 2 occasions, the man has dropped a beer bottle off of his foyer and it cracked right in front of our door. We have a Ring camera and caught him picking up a few larger pieces of glass, but leaving the rest. We ended up cleaning it because I was worried that my dogs would step on the glass or that we could be the ones to get fined by the HOA if they saw broken glass in front of our entrance. They also have a dog. I don't blame the dog for anything. He seems like a nice dog. But he is a pit bull terrier mix, and I have not once seen them take him for a proper walk. I always hear him running wild upstairs, probably from all the pent-up energy of being stuck inside all day. We have found large chunks of bones in our backyard from their dog, most likely pushing it over the balcony, and once found a chicken bone with ants all over it in our backyard, which my dogs easily could have eaten or led to an infestation in our house. I've also seen them let their dog out to use the bathroom, mind you, off-leash, which is also against the house rules, and there have been at least a couple of instances where the dog pees right on my car, since we all share a common parking area. Again, I don't blame the dog, but I witnessed the owner just standing there watching his dog pee for a good 10 seconds on my back bumper while not saying anything. While this doesn't necessarily hurt or put anyone at risk, it's still terribly annoying. The reason we haven't gone out of our way to talk to them about how their behavior and way of living is affecting us mostly is because we are very non-confrontational people, but also we have heard our other neighbors who live directly next to them confront them, which led to yelling matches and cops being called on multiple occasions. Even after the back and forth and the cops showing up, their behavior doesn't change, and if they don't get even the slightest sense of self-awareness from their next-door neighbors bringing it up, I doubt a couple of 20-something-year-olds asking them to contain their waste will make any sort of difference. We're also afraid that if we speak up and let it be known that we have a problem with them, they might do something to retaliate. We have cameras that capture our front and back entrances, but because they're directly above us, we wouldn't be able to catch them in the act of actually dropping stuff on our property. We've taken pictures of their waste on our property and sent it to our HOA to make sure we have a record of it, but we have not once received a response from them with any sort of direction to remedy the situation. That's why I'm writing here to see if anyone might have any sort of idea of what we can do to get this to stop, since we're probably going to be living here for at least another 6 to 8 years. The top comment basically says if they've already taken pictures, send them to the HOA, talk to the manager, and really there's nothing else they can do. And he says, and look, I know it's not easy doing anything out of fear of retaliation, and because you have to live so close to them, but if the other neighbors have taken issue, then they're not alone. Talk to the manager directly, show them the pictures, absolutely call the cops, and keep calling them until they actually do something about it. Not Your Trash Can, posted by Extra Entertainer 986. I promise more stories, so here's another one, also during the county fair. This one's just weird. It was a pretty mild summer, so the turnout was higher. Go figure, people didn't want to be boiled to death while trying to eat a piping hot funnel cake in the middle of the day. Who knew? I'm going about my day doing normal Saturday chores, lawn and grocery shopping. I get back to and from the store, and by some miracle, no one is blocking my mailbox. Good. My mailman is incredibly lazy and won't approach if a car is too close. Also stories for a different sub, and no one's in my drive yet. With things put away in the house, I go outside. My trash cans, recycling, green waste, and general garbage are out on the road because for some reason it makes sense for the busiest street to have pickup on days that events are consistently happening on it. I'm surprised to find the trash has all been picked up before noon, so I should be able to get them all pulled back to my house before there's a lot of people trying to use them. The fairground literally has over 100 trash cans set up, or someone tries to move them to park, which according to city code they aren't allowed to do, but again, the cops in this town, they don't care at all. I was wrong. I'm walking out my door as a car pulls up in front of my bins. A dad, 2 boys, and a grandpa get out. I'm not even 5 feet away, and this old guy had to have seen me. He walks to the back of their SUV, opens my green waste bin, and tries to throw a mostly full Gatorade bottle in. I yelled, "Excuse me, please don't throw your garbage in my bins." The old man turns to me, puts his hand to his ear, and goes, "What?" like he's hard of hearing. I'm not deterred by this because, unless he's colorblind and mostly visually impaired with dementia, he knows better. I repeat myself, "Please don't put your garbage in there." The dad of the boys calls out, "Come on, Dad, let's go." Magically, the old man's hearing is perfect. His son was further away, still by the front of the SUV, and the old fart says, "It's not that big of a deal," and he walks away, bottle in hand. "Sir, why did you need to throw away a mostly full bottle? Why couldn't you have just carried it another 30 feet to the public bin across the street? And why did you go for the green waste bin when the garbage can is next to it?" Great way to start my afternoon. Later that afternoon was my first entitled Parker. I go to look out my front window, trying to decide if it's worth it or not to go over and get a cupcake from one of the stands that I really like. Lo and behold, there's a weird car in my drive. I ask my neighbors, not theirs. They thought we got a new one. They tell me to call the police because that's what a cop told them to do. We could get in trouble for any damage to the vehicle, and a towing company could charge us since it's our property. Being 22 at the time, I accepted this truth because adulthood comes with a lot of rules, so okay. I go back to my house to call the cops. As I'm going in my door, I hear the car start and turn to see a gaggle of women getting in. I'm already annoyed, so I yell, "Hey, this is private property." The driver pops back out of her car and says, "We weren't even here that long." Because that somehow matters? I decided that I'm not going low, so I just go back inside and tell my husband that night that I'm slashing tires from now on. He looks me dead in the eye and asked, "You want them to leave, so why would you make it so that they can't leave?" Realizing what I just said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do then, okay? It really should not be that hard to respect other people's property. To anyone thinking, well, I'd rather not litter, so that's why I use random strangers' trash cans. Do you realize that you can just hold on to your crap and not litter in general? Or, if you're that desperate to throw something away, you can knock on someone's door. I've had people, just on a normal day, walk all the way down my driveway and into my lawn to get to my trash can to throw something away. That's just obnoxious. I know it's tempting, but they could have just held on to it. What would have you done? Nosy neighbor keeps calling the city and police on me, and now is trying to have my dog taken away. Posted by Motorlicious Baby. OP gives us updates and more info in the comments. I, 22 female, and my partner, 24 male, purchased our first home January 2022, and we absolutely love the neighborhood and our direct neighbors right next door. We're the youngest couple in the area, with most of the people being older and retired. We also have no kids, only a 2-year-old Siberian Husky who is my baby. The problems began as soon as we moved in, with complaints piling in first about our lawn. The house was abandoned before we purchased it, and then there was a noise complaint about our dog. For a Husky, she barely makes any noise, so I was surprised about the complaint, but I just let it go. About 9 months into living at the home, my partner purchased me an antique car which needed some work done before it could be driven. It was parked far into our long driveway, not yet tagged because we had just purchased it, and one tire was off to be fixed. The very next day, we got a nasty letter on our door from the city about an inoperable vehicle on our property that must be removed. We found this very strange, and after speaking with the inspector, who simply told us to move the car, we found out that there is a person in the neighborhood who keeps reporting us but remains anonymous. I got close with my closest neighbors and tried to ask them for advice on what to do. They both said that the most likely person to be reporting us is the neighbor that's across from us. An old lady and her husband who live with their blinds wide open just looking outside 24/7. Their daughter, a Karen in the making, drives around the neighborhood looking for people to report. My partner and I just happened to become the latest victims, and she apparently really hates us. So I decided to, just be nice to her and kill it with kindness. Oh, big mistake. So about 2 months ago, I fixed up my motorcycle and decided to take it out for a ride to enjoy the warm weather. While it idled in my driveway to warm up while I geared up, I saw the daughter come by with her kid to my neighbors across the street. The child seemed very interested in the bike, so I gave a little wave and I hopped on the machine to ride off. I enjoyed the ride, and when I returned, I parked the bike in the driveway to do some basic maintenance. A police officer then rolled up to my house. He claimed that there was a complaint out about me riding recklessly, doing wheelies and burnouts, and being a danger to the neighborhood. I was completely floored, and I tried to plead my case that I just went for a ride, and I didn't even stay in the neighborhood. He let me off with the warning, and as he drove away, I noticed my neighbor standing in the window, staring at me. From that point on, I decided to mind my own business and not to act friendly to them. Fast forward to this past month. My partner and I had to travel to New York for my family, and we decided to take our dog with us. We had a wonderful time, and when we got back to our home, we only had 4 days to wash clothes and repack before heading off to California for more family time. Within those 4 days, my partner worked days and I worked nights, so our dog was never left alone. Trust me, this becomes important. 3 days ago, I dropped my dog off with a trusted friend whose dog always plays with mine. I paid her $800 to watch my dog at her house for 2 weeks. My home is empty at this point, and I fly to California to enjoy a relaxing vacation. I get video and photo updates of my dog playing and having a blast staying with my friend. This morning, I get a text message from one of my good neighbors saying animal control stopped by my house and she asked me if my dog was okay. I was extremely confused because I just gotten a photo of my dog cuddled up on my friend's couch. I decided to call the city and see what was up. The city told me that there were multiple reports against me for neglect, abuse, and improper care of my dog, and that a full investigation was going to be conducted against me. I was at a loss for words. I'm across the country right now, and this neighbor has stepped too far now, trying to take my very spoiled and very well cared for dog away from me. All of my friends and my next door neighbors can vouch for just how loved that dog is. So now I'm waiting to hear back from animal control to explain my case. I have no idea what is going to happen next, if they will take my dog or inspect my house or what. I am exhausted and I'm tired of the harassment by this neighbor. I'm hesitant to get pregnant out of fear that this neighbor would call CPS on me. I feel watched and unwelcome and not quite sure what to do. Any advice from those who have been through something similar is very appreciated. Is there anything legally I can do to make it stop? Comments are saying it's harassment to get a lawyer and also to get cameras, and OP replies, I let them know, being animal control, they are meeting with my friend tonight to see my dog in person. I also gave animal control my vet's contact information. She just had an appointment recently. According to my other neighbors, they've been in this neighborhood for generations and they do this to everyone. They don't like me because we are a young couple and we bought the house instead of renting. They sent an email and did a phone call to animal control. I'm requesting FOIA to read the email complaint. When I spoke with animal control, they said she claimed my dog was starving and locked inside with no food, water, or bathroom breaks. And yeah, I've reported abused animals in my area before, and they haven't even done a welfare check. I'm just guessing she must have someone that she knows with the city or something. Or it may be for the husky that lives down the street, and I'm the one being blamed? I live in the South, and this other dog that isn't mine is left outside 24/7 with no food or shelter. But yet, my spoiled dog who lives inside and isn't even there right now is being reported. That's crazy. I hope you can take some legal action against these crazy people, OP. Get ready for a huge Karen in You Have to Sell Me the House. Posted by Lurid Fox. Background. Years ago, when I was in college, my parents decided to sell their house and move into something smaller. Now, this was their dream home. 5 bedrooms, huge, on a small lake, and just all around, a pretty sweet house on a nice lot. Now, my dad is a sales and marketing guy, so the story of how we got this house is that he simply knocked on the door one day. He was friendly with them and told them that if they ever wanted to sell, that we would be interested. Years later, they did just that, and it was between us and another family. Blind bid, and ours was higher. Back to the present. When my parents decided to sell, kids moved out, too much house for the 2 of them, they ended up just directly selling to our immediate neighbor. She apparently had money, was very friendly, and we knew her pretty well. I guess she'd always liked her house or something. Somehow, word got out, and some entitled suburban people in the neighborhood were not fans of that. Shortly before the sale, I was at home for the weekend doing laundry and watching the house and pets while my parents were away for the weekend. In the middle of the afternoon, I hear a knock on the door. I answer it to a stern-looking Karen type, and the conversation goes as follows. Is this house for sale? No. Well, where are your parents? With a stern voice, I say, out, and I don't know her, and I don't want to give too much to her. Well, I heard your parents are selling this house, but you just told me it's not for sale. Yeah. So it is for sale then. She's smirking like she just won something. No, it's not. Well, who are your parents selling this house to? Oh, it's a private sale, in a nice, calm voice. Well, I didn't get a chance to buy it. Sounds like it. Well, that's not fair. They have to offer it to anyone in the neighborhood. No, they don't. That's a lie. But I want this house. I deserve this house. My family. No, you really don't. With a chuckle, I cut her off. They have to sell it to me. No, they don't. What is their phone number? I'm going to talk to them because you don't know anything. Yeah, you're not getting that from me. She could have easily gotten it and possibly a cell phone number for my parents from the neighborhood directory. How dare you? Just like this? No. Well, give them this and tell them they have to call me to sell the house. She handed me a business card. You realize you have no say in who they sell their house to, right? And that your attitude is petulant and entitled? I then visually tossed the card over my shoulder and shut the door. She kept yelling something and I didn't care. I did tell my parents about it and gave them the business card. My mom knew her some and didn't like her for the same reasons. I later heard she came back and was trying to get me in trouble, but they turned her away, and apparently my mom chuckled when the lady was going off on how rude and disrespectful she was. She insisted to them that the HOA rules said that they had to offer it to the neighborhood. Untrue. And over a decade later, the neighbor they sold it to still lives there. I just love how she knew that she could get to buy the house. I had a blast with the interaction and got to shut down an entitled person. I worked retail at the time, so it was even more satisfying. Annoying, inconsiderate neighbors need advice. Posted by Carly98. OP gives us updates and more info in the comments. Me, a 25 female, and my husband, 28 male, moved into our neighborhood about a year and some months ago. The neighbors at first seemed fine. As time went on, even after a few days, we got the impression that they didn't know what personal boundaries were or respect in accounts to their kids coming and just playing in our yard constantly while they have plenty of land for them to be on. The first few days we were moving in, their son, who's probably 7 or 8 years old, he walked into our house uninvited and told my husband, "My daddy said I could come in whenever I want." which is weird and rude on one hand, and also to let your child come into a stranger's house unsupervised when it was the first few days of us being there. We don't know y'all like that, and you don't know us like that. I was also 9 months pregnant at the time with our firstborn daughter, who's 1, and made me uneasy and aggravated. When we first moved in, they also had a mixed range of livestock that they kept in their backyard, talking like chickens, ducks, potbelly pigs, and also 3 dogs at the time. When they would free roam, they'd come out into our yard constantly. The pigs would rut up the yard, the dogs would mess with our dog, who is and was very protective on the account that I was pregnant and had my daughter outside with us when we would do our yard work, or just hang out outside, so they would just get in fights and get rough, which made my daughter get scared and upset. A lot of their livestock ended up dying or getting killed because they don't know what they're doing when it comes to proper care for farm animals. Their daughter killed one of their ducklings by being too rough. Then now they just have a few chickens. Their male dogs are also not fixed, so leading to our female healer to get pregnant not once, but twice. I have addressed this concern to the wife, 25 female, about her dogs free roaming, as we are right on the road where cars come down all the time, and also for them to not come in our yard unless they're fixed at least. But she doesn't care, she's a bee. Our dog is now fixed and stays in our yard mostly on her leash, but they don't care and they still let their male dogs free roam and come into our yard even if ours is on her leash outside and they come and bother her while she has her bathroom time or playtime. I have a handful more of things that I can name wrong with these people, but I'll just cut it short for now. I just want to hear others' opinions on this on account of there's no animal control where I live, so nothing much I can do about their dog still coming over here while I try to take our dog out and to be outside with my daughter while she plays. And talking to them does nothing, as they don't get it, nor do they care. Update from OP says, I have no problem with their animals free roaming on their property. That's what the wife wasn't comprehending when I told her. But once they cross that property line onto ours, she has no right to get upset if something happens to them. They have claimed our dog has killed some of their chickens and they have it on video. But I was sent no such video. And trust me, she's not shy about pulling up receipts, even though their dogs roam freely as well. So, no right to accuse our dog of doing any of that when they easily could have killed them. That's what we've been in the process of doing when we started our fence a few months back, and it's been a slow work in progress. We started with about 20 panels of 10-foot high wood fencing. When that runs out, we're going to lead the rest with livestock wire all around our land because we would like to have livestock of our own also. As well, when it's all finished up, maybe some chickens and rabbits, quail, and maybe a goat. And for our dog to have a space for sure. I sure hope there's something you can do to escalate this, OP. These neighbors are crazy. Have you ever had a bad neighbor? OP gives Karen a taste of her own medicine. This story's called Old Woman Yells at Me for Not Telling Her to Get Out of the Way, posted by Livy5000. Okay, so I was in Walmart for groceries. I'm not in any hurry, and I don't mind waiting behind someone. There was this old woman in front of me on a certain aisle. I was patiently waiting for her to move so I could get what I needed. She noticed me and asked all cranky like, "Do you need something from here?" Yes. She didn't give a chance to say more, which would have been, but I don't mind waiting. She gets really angry and screams at me, "Well, why didn't you tell me to move out of the way? I would have moved." Now I got really angry and I snapped at her. Unlike you, I'm not a rude cow. I have no problem waiting since I have plenty of time, and even if I didn't, I still wouldn't be so rude. I was raised right. I deliberately added the last part since a lot of old people like to use that so much. She got really angry and turned red in the face and started screaming at me. I rolled my eyes and said, "Whatever." More anger, and then I thought to myself, and I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this crap. So I turned around to go the other way, and she starts following me, still screaming. So I ran and started giggling. She wasn't able to run. The screaming died down. I hid for a few minutes and then went back to get what I wanted. It was when I got outside to put my groceries in my car. I had just finished and just got into my car, and then she appeared at my window screaming. Just about scared me half to death. I couldn't help myself. I mean, when would I really get such an awesome opportunity to be a butthole? Since she couldn't actually harm me, I became childish. I rolled down my window just a few centimeters and it stuck out my thumb and said, "Nanaboo, you can't catch me." The stunned astonishment and silence was very entertaining. Then her face got redder and kind of purple. The screaming started again, which was muted when I closed the window. I did a few more childish things which increased the screaming, and then suddenly she stopped. I was gleefully laughing. She ran out of breath and walked away rather abruptly. I was kind of disappointed, but oh well. It was when I got home and got my kids to help bring in the groceries that both of them took one look at me and said, "What did you do?" Haha. You know what they say about assuming, Karen, and if you can't take it, don't dish it out. Your dad is sick and then he died? Well, you're responsible for the late fee, posted by ProJazz TV Trumpets. To begin, my dad had a trust set up so that if something happens to him or he died, then a trustee can handle his affairs and probate court could be avoided for his stuff after death. However, a trust only grants those permissions once certain criteria are met, such as being incapacitated and of course death. My dad got sick in December, was mentally not there after waking up from an induced coma, and never mentally recovered. During most of this, I was able to handle the basic bills with his debit card and Social Security deposits, but I could not access his savings account where he kept money for things like home and car insurance annual dues and HOA annual dues. Not wanting to rush anything, I did not petition the doctors for a certificate of incapacitation until February. That part was easy. The docs were signed off on almost immediately upon asking. That gave me the ability to contact the attorney who made the trust and activate my power of attorney, guardianship, and accept my role as successor trustee. This obviously gave me access to accounts. It took about 2 weeks for the attorney to record everything with the county, but Dad got sicker in March with an infection he could not fight and was given weeks to live. He passed in April. When you're told that your dad, a man that you love unconditionally, is going to die soon, you put things on hold and spend time with that person, like every waking moment. And I know that the power, the gas, and the water isn't going to get shut off immediately if I'm a few days late. I know the mortgage has a grace period. The car insurance company, read that again, an insurance company, even worked with me on the delayed annual payment and put his account into a monthly status with a payment that reflected the same discount given to people who pay the full year up front. The HOA, however, dues were due in April. I got access to his funds in March, and then I got the news. His neighbors loved my dad. His house was the neighborhood party house. The entire HOA board hung out there, and the HOA, for the most part, is laid back on rules. I told the treasurer that I wasn't paying a dime until he died, and he said, no worries, and he'll waive the late fee because I shouldn't be worrying about bills at a time like that. The HOA president, however, at his deathbed, asked me when I was paying. I said, well, I'll worry about that later. She asked if I didn't have the money personally. Stupidly, I said, I have the money, but I'm spending time with my dad. I'm the only familiar face that he knows right now. Dad passed, we had the funeral, and I went home for 2 weeks to decompress before managing his affairs and whatnot. I came back to 3 invoices in his mailbox. The first one was just the annual dues, but the next one had a 10% late fee, and the one after that had a 20% late fee in addition to the 10% late fee. I called the treasurer, and he said he was overruled by the president. I called the entire board, and, surprise, the president didn't call back. The board agreed and tried to press her, but she would not budge. During all of this, they added another 10% through the property management company who sends the invoice bypassing the treasurer. The reasoning? There was a responsible agent prior to the due date who could have paid this. I talked to the attorney who very plainly said that the HOA past due fees are magnitudes less than it would cost to fight them. So I freaking paid it with a letter addressed to the board that said, all HOA board members invited to the house for dinner after sale, but before closing, except the HOA president. I had an estate sale and I kicked her out, loudly, by saying, well, look who is here, the lion, the witch, and the audacity of this bee, when she came to look at his stuff. She specifically requested a paperweight that he kept on his desk that had no meaning to anyone but her. When it didn't sell in the estate sale, I listed it on the neighborhood app for $1, then said it would cost the amount of the late fee when she inquired, took the ad down, and I took it home when she declined to pay almost $500 for it, and it's on my desk now. So yeah, screw HOAs and the jerks that run them. Couldn't have any respect, dignity, or civility over a late fee while someone is dying. Said it before and I'll say it again. Money and power corrupts people, and this is absolutely no dignity at a time when you need that dignity the most. Come on, HOA president, you really dropped the ball on this one. A Karen HOA story called Entitled Neighbor from Heck, posted by Gertrude Secret. This is the story of my entitled neighbor, Bob. We live in an HOA, I know, and Bob lives across the green space from us. Bob's entitlement was evident almost from the moment that we moved in. About a month after we moved in, the police, the sheriff, and the DEA came knocking at our door. Bob had called them and told them that we had lawn bags full of cannabis in our garage. It's important to note here that I use medical cannabis. Bob runs the local Narcotics Anonymous group. Well, I gave the cops the grand tour of our home, and there was nothing here at all. They apologized for the intrusion and left. A week later, our landlord called because Bob had called him, saying that we had a grow-op going on here. Our landlord knew he was lying because the landlord had just been here. Bob was trying to get us out of the neighborhood because he can't have that crap in his neighborhood. He gave up on that when my daughter and her husband purchased the property. Then he started with the constant complaints and demands. We weren't allowed to feed the squirrels because it made a mess. We couldn't plant clover because it might get in his yard. We had to mow more frequently because he mows twice a week. We only mowed once and it looked bad. The list goes on and on. He mows the green space between our houses every time he mows his lawn, killing all the wildflowers, and then he tells people that they can't walk there because he mows it so it's his. The worst of his entitled behavior started 2 years ago. He decided he was going to stop using his furnace and burn wood instead. Now, I have lung cancer and my next door neighbor has COPD, so this was really bad. In January 2022, we had a stagnant air warning, which means you can only use wood stoves or fireplaces if that's your only source of heat. Bob didn't care, and the thick smoke from his wood stove blanketed the neighborhood. One morning, I woke up unable to breathe. My daughter called for an ambulance, and I stopped breathing and had to be intubated. I spent 6 days in a medically induced coma and another week in the hospital. My kids tried talking to him, and I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't care. He said he was allowed to heat his house any way he saw fit. We called the county, and they told him his wood stove was outdated and needed to be replaced. He said he would replace it, but 2 years later, it still has not happened. The final straw for me was when another neighbor and I had an argument. It was all of 2 minutes and resolved the next day. He came over screaming at me because he was not putting up with this crap in his neighborhood. Then he screamed at me that it was not fair that I got disability for cancer and he had to work all day. A month later, he was suddenly in too much pain to work. He went on disability from his job, spending his time climbing on his roof, working on his motorcycles, mowing his yard every other day, and generally just enjoying not having to work. Someone he worked with turned him in for fraud, and we had investigators out here taking pictures of his activities around the house. I made sure to have a chat with them myself. After you hear what this Karen did, you'll wonder how she even made it as long as she did. It's called Entitled Coworker Got Herself Fired, posted by Dragon Crystal. Backstory: I never personally worked with this Karen, but I'd seen her chatting with everyone in our department on the workplace chat group made by the department manager. It reached the point where she just refused to work unless it was under her terms and made up excuses on why she couldn't work her assigned shifts. I'm just going to list off a few things that I recall seeing on work chat, a bit of my short experience with her, and then I'll mention what I was told by coworkers and what leads up to when she was eventually let go due to refusing to work her shifts and whatnot. So there's going to be me, Karen, and a few coworkers: Bella, Derry, Zelda, a manager, and Jane, another manager. Karen said, "Hey, anyone want Thursday off? I can take your shift and you can get the day off instead." Coworker said, "Sure, you can take my 11 to 5 shift." Actually, I meant night shift," Karen replied. "Oh, okay, that's fine, but I'm still leaving it open for grabs because I've got things to do and I can't make it." Karen, you can take my 5 to 11 p.m. shift because I have to open the following day, another coworker said. Karen replied, I can't work later than 10 p.m. I need my sleep and I live very far from here. Now, as a note, I didn't respond because I was at work and I was only able to take a quick glimpse at my phone. Also, I only work mornings, so I usually don't respond to picking up night shifts, and I only respond to shifts that I know I can pick up or if I'm messaged personally by a fellow coworker. Several days later, Karen says, Hey, can anyone pick up my night shift? I'm not feeling well and I've been feeling off all of these days. Nobody responded because we were all busy or dealing with other things at the moment. Was told a few days later she never showed up to her shift that day or called out. Days later, Karen says again, Does anyone want my morning shift for their night shift? I'm not a morning person and I really need my sleep. Hey, hello? Does anyone want my morning shift? It's from 11 to 5. 5 minutes goes by with no response, and I've seen her message, but it was in the middle of rush hour and I had a rush of drinks to make. Also, that shift was technically a mid-shift, not even morning shift anymore. I know because I'm scheduled that shift several times. Karen says, Wow, so that's how it's gonna be. If nobody wanted my shift, then just say it. Don't ignore me like that. That's rude. She unsends the message before saying, Oh, sorry, I didn't type that. It was my sister who wrote that last part. Sure, Karen. Now comes my short experience with her. On the first day, she was supposed to be my night replacement along with Bella, the other coworker. It was a bit busy, so I stayed a few minutes behind to help Bella catch up on drink orders before noticing that Karen has yet to show up. So I went to Zelda, the manager, and I told her, Hey, Karen hasn't shown up yet and it's past my out time. Did you want me to stay and wait or I can head out? Manager says, Give me 2 minutes and I'll give Karen a call. Now I'm not worried about it, so I agreed and I went back to helping Bella again. It's about 15 minutes after my shift and Bella is all caught up with the drinks and told me that I can head out until Karen arrives, so I approach Zelda, the manager, to see Karen's status. Manager says, So I called Karen and she's currently stuck in traffic. If Bella is all caught up with drinks, you can head out. So I confirm that I just helped Bella get caught up with everything and the manager gives me the okay to leave for the day. Day 2, Karen again pulls the same thing, claiming she was again going to be late due to being stuck in traffic. Luckily, that day was a very, very slow day, and I was allowed to leave on time as soon as Bella arrived to replace me. Now is when she was fired. Derry, another coworker of mine, told me after I found out that Karen was fired that she'd never actually want to run any drinks except 1 or 2 the entire shift and would always be on her phone or wandering off somewhere to hide until managers intervened to get her back to work. Then she'd refuse to assist with bringing dirty dishes down to be washed and make everyone else do it instead, as well as fake to not being feeling well right after clocking in for work and then getting sent home, as well as picking up shifts and then just not showing up to them or claiming I overslept and didn't hear my alarm, or I misread my schedule and thought I was working tomorrow, while again pulling another no-call no-show. Management had enough and fired her along with several other people too. One whom I'll mention was caught sleeping on the job and smugly said to a fellow coworker, You owe me for making me have to bring these dishes downstairs to be washed, when she and several other people were having upset stomachs due to something they ate for lunch that evening. She didn't owe him anything. He was sleeping on the job and she was doing all the work. She was perfectly fine after a few hours and still works there. I don't know how this Karen lasted as long as she did. You'd think she'd be axed way before this point. This one's called Fool Me Once, Shame on You. Fool Me Twice, I'll Bury You, posted by Welcome to My Mind. This is primarily sweet revenge, but it was achieved by maliciously complying. Background: I work for a very large roofing company, and in this particular region, there are only 3 companies that are considered when it comes to larger commercial projects. So that's like apartment complexes, condos, and so on. And my company is one of them. We all had worked the region as friendly competitors so much so that up to this point, if one of us landed a large deal but didn't have the time to complete it, we would hand it off to one of the other 2 in good faith. We'd be paid a finder's fee based off of the cost of the total job, and the cycle would continue. That is, until the following incident went down. 2 years ago, I got a contract for a commercial metal building but did not have the crews to spare for this project. So I called the owner of one of the other two companies, let's call him Mr. D for D-Bag, that I previously mentioned could handle this, and I referred him the deal, which he graciously accepted. My finder's fee here would have been about 40 grand. A pretty hefty chunk of change, but he probably made 5 times that in profit. He never paid me this. I tried calling him dozens of times to get paid, but he was now dodging me. Eventually, my number and email were blocked from calling his phone, office, and both work and personal emails. Okay, if that's how you want to be, two can play at this game. Fast forward a couple months, and there was a massive storm that damaged a huge condo complex. I'm talking several hundred units. At this particular complex, the HOA board made the decision on what company would be selected to do the work. I knew several members and they knew of my work, so I was called in to assist with the adjustment from the insurance company and make sure that they were taken care of under the assumption that I would get the contract for this deal. I met the adjuster on site who knew me and my company very well, as we had been working the same market for nearly a decade at this point. He and I tag-teamed the adjustment to speed it along, and he also used my knowledge to help him understand what all needed to be covered. He primarily did flood damage claims, so he wasn't the most knowledgeable about roofing. Thus, he deferred to me for my expertise quite often when it came to these claims, especially pricing. This comes into play later. We finished the adjustment after 2 full days on site, and the adjuster heads off to go to work on the estimate, which he will have in about a week. At this time, Mr. D from the previously mentioned company finds out about this property and tries to finagle his way into getting the contract. Turns out, he knew the president of the HOA through some mutual friends. Mr. D bribed the president with a cruise to the Caribbean and a free new roof on his son's home to try and get the deal. Now, the entire board, aside from the president, was backing me at this point, and he wanted me to do the work, but the dude just wasn't having it. I was forwarded an internal email chain from one of the friendly board members where Mr. President flat out replied, "I don't give a crap, I will not let OP do our roofs." At this point, the other board members could easily just outvote him and give the job to me, and he knows this and tells Mr. D. So, what does Mr. D do in all of his infinite wisdom? Well, Turbo Nuts decided to buy all the material needed for the project, has it delivered, and has a crew start tearing off our roof without a signed contract. He did this knowing it would force the board's hand and they'd have to use him, solidifying him as the contractor. Okay, so I lost the deal, but where does my revenge and deliciously evil compliance come in, you ask? Well, remember when I said we were all waiting for the adjuster to write the estimate? We were about to get it. Now, anyone who has ever dealt with an insurance claim knows the insurance company always underpays the first time around. It's just how it is. You then deny acceptance of their price, send in your estimate, and negotiate. That is, unless you agree to their estimate up front. So, the day before Mr. D pulls his stunt, I get an email from the adjuster who is completely unaware of what is transpiring with his first draft of the estimate. As per usual, he sends it asking me to review it and to see if the pricing is right. Oh boy, was it not! This project should have cost anywhere between $500,000 to $600,000, and his estimate was for $240 grand. Fun fact, if a capable contractor and the customer agree to an insurance estimate, it makes it nearly impossible to ask for more money down the road, since the customer and person able to do the work agreed to the original price. I think you already know where this is going. I replied back, "Yeah, looks good. Cut that check and send it to the HOA." So I went to the HOA the following day and I gave them the insurance estimate. I told them they just had to call the adjuster and confirm that they also approved it, and they did exactly that. I wished him the best of luck and to give this to Mr. D, as he will need to get that contract finally signed for that price. I didn't put up a fight. I didn't argue or try to get the deal back. I simply went in knowing that I was no longer getting the deal and would have to accept that. Poof! I disappeared into the wind to let my plan play itself out. I found out a few months later from my friends on that board that Mr. D went absolutely ape crap when they gave him the agreed upon price. He tried calling the adjuster and getting a new price set, but the adjuster just replied that if he couldn't do it for that price, I was more than able to. He knew that he was screwed because he'd already committed himself to re-roofing that entire complex no matter what. He lost about $100,000 on that project based on my calculations. On top of that, he tried to cut every corner imaginable to get his costs down and ended up doing an absolutely terrible job. So terrible that the HOA is now suing him for not standing behind his work, as numerous leaks have sprung up, and some of the work is so shoddy it can be seen from the street, and he is refusing to pay for it or come back and correct anything. He would have been better off to just do the project properly, eat the loss, which his company was large enough that he could eat it and not go under, and walk away, tail between his legs. He is not smart enough to come to this conclusion, as I found out. You try to be stingy and to bite my hand that fed you, then you come back for seconds, I'll bury you. Occasionally, I do feel bad knowing that his company couldn't even get a contract for a chicken coop at this point, but then I remember that he purposefully went out of his way to try and screw me and try to destroy any and all mutual respect that we had for one another. He made his bed, now he gets to lie in it. Update: Mr. President ended up not getting his promised Caribbean vacation or free roof, FYI. Mr. D reneged on that pretty fast. I also later found out that one of the workers slipped and fell into the attic and went through the ceiling of Mr. President's unit. He was fine, by the way. Think Tom Hanks in the Money Pit when he falls through the floor. I got a good chuckle out of that one. Did you ever get your $40,000? Oh heck no, and I never will more than likely, but I've made it back in other ways since this. Because since he has destroyed his reputation, myself and company number 3 are doing all the large projects in the area. All this work split 2 ways is better than 3 ways. Myself and company 3 definitely got overloaded for a bit there, but we both managed and actually both grew in size and profits at an outrageous scale afterwards. So yeah, it all worked out. And we're on great terms because now we're the only 2 left who get these big jobs. The large lost world, property management, HOAs, and private owners, is a small one, so word traveled fast. Now they did ask me to fix the mistakes that Mr. D made. I steered them towards a crew that could do it far cheaper than I could, being the middleman and all, and how to get those costs reimbursed by Mr. D. The repairs were made and the costs were reimbursed. HOA assistance and advice, posted by JoeSal35. I need some assistance and advice with my HOA. My wife and I live in a condo and townhome community in New Jersey. In late June of this year, I decided to replace my kitchen faucet as a phase of one of several home improvement projects. After watching several kitchen faucet replacement videos, I decided to call a plumber. When the plumbers arrived, they realized that the shutoff valve into the unit was broken. They stated that they're able to fix it, but first we would need permission from the HOA and their maintenance would have to shut off the valve into the entire building, thus turning off everyone else's water. Basically, I'm responsible for everything inside the unit and the HOA is responsible for the outside. So I conveyed this to the HOA and they decided to send out the maintenance man to look for our unit's shutoff valve, as they did not believe that the plumbers knew where it was. After 20 minutes, the maintenance man agreed that the shutoff valve that the plumbers identified is, in fact, the shutoff valve. We then agreed with the HOA management that we would shut off the water into the building for the plumbers to do the work. I arranged for a time for the plumbers to come back at 9 a.m. the next day with the HOA's permission. The HOA stated that the maintenance man would be there to help. When the next day rolled around, the maintenance man came in at 7:30 a.m., tried to shut off the unit's shutoff valve, and left for a doctor's appointment after saying the plumber can work with a small amount of water trickle coming through the kitchen faucet. Needless to say, the plumbers disagreed. Maintenance workers from other units had to come and help the plumbers, but they realized that the shutoff valve into the building was also broken. The plumbers had to leave after 2 hours, to which I had to pay their appearance rate. After more back and forth with the HOA, they decided that a special plumber needed to fix the building's shutoff valve. It is now late July, and the HOA stated that there is no diagram of the development's pipe layout and that they do not know where the building's shutoff valve is. The excuse that they gave me is that there were several different developers who built the different buildings, and they lost the diagrams along the way. I can't move on with my home improvement projects until this is fixed, And I'm also concerned that if a water emergency were to happen in either my unit or my neighbor's, we'd be in big trouble. Also, I don't think it's acceptable for them to not know where the unit's pipes are. The master deed states that they are to maintain the water system. Although they're attempting to fix it now, it does not seem that they've done so previously, and their ineptitude is costing us money. Does anyone have any advice? Is a lawsuit possible? This commenter says that he's kind of screwed, needs to keep pushing the HOA and get a lawyer, and then talks about getting a good plumber if the HOA can't do it. Good carcinogens and bad carcinogens, posted by Disneyopolis. HOA documents were hastily drafted by an attorney with an AOL email address, while the building was hastily converted from apartments to condos during the 2006 and 7 housing bubble, so you know the documents are bulletproof. We have 6 owner-occupants and 6 rental units, with 4 of the landlords living outside of the city and 2 of the landlords living outside of the state. Our treasurer contracts cleaning and gardening to herself and reimburses herself for her cleaning services by transferring money from the HOA account to her personal account, and nobody says or does anything about it. No tax returns, no 1099s, nothing. Conflict of interest at best, embezzlement at worst. She interprets the documents however it's convenient for her, and you can quote her directly back to herself and she will backpedal. Enough backstory. Our board is willing to spend $2,000 on an amendment to ban cannabis and tobacco smoking before legalization takes effect on August 1st, and has been using some pretty shady techniques for the amendment and the vote, but they are not willing to spend $1,800 to mitigate radon on the garden level, which is the equivalent of 12 cigarettes a day. The building has always been non-smoking from the very beginning, even though it's never been in the documents. Are there good carcinogens and bad carcinogens? One of the absentee landlords on the board responded to the above question with, "As an HOA, I think that everyone should assume positive intent by other owners. We are all volunteers and we all have a lot going on in our lives. If you want your dues to go up substantially, we can hire someone to manage the HOA. Do you really think a company will care about what is happening in a small 12-unit building? Gaslighting, yay! Do people with positive intent usually have to ask you to assume positive intent? Certainly, being a volunteer with a very busy life excuses lack of response to building maintenance, lawn care, snow removal, and so on. I'm sure the LLC that our secretary owns for her rental unit is very concerned about what is happening in a small 12-unit building. Perhaps she would feel more comfortable if she kept to her suburban McMansion 30 miles away and left the management of the building to us poors. What is the appropriate level of shade and trolling for my response? I wasn't even going to attend the meeting so they wouldn't have a quorum, until they sent a reminder that if you didn't have a proxy, the board would be your proxy. I also got them to postpone the vote until after August 1st, because one of my garden level peers, a medical MJ patient, is pending sale. The least they can do is allow the new owner to have a voice, right? I am thinking about voting present so that they meet their quorum, but one less vote towards a majority. Click my next crazy HOA Karen compilation on your screen to continue your listening session. Thanks for checking this one out, and see you in the next one.